There you go.
Testing. It's on now.
All right, there you go.
Case, call back to order. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Juan Martyr, a 12th grade student from Hiram Johnson High School.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
See there?
Juan Martyr is currently a senior at Hiram Johnson High School. He has been the captain of the Hiram Johnson soccer team for 2 years and was recently recognized as an All-Metro soccer selection during the 2013 season, and is well on his way to another nomination. His coaches highlight his devotion and encouragement to his teammates and his leadership during difficult plays. Other coaches in the league have noted that the difficulty in offenses and have been getting and have goals. Oh, sorry, I'm having trouble reading that today. Their offenses have getting goals past one. One is an integral part of Hiram Johnson football team. Having begun his football career during the 2013 season as kicker and a punter, he is noted on his consistency, reliability, and presence of mind and quick decision-making, having scored crucial points in close games. Regardless of his sports achievements, Juan has been distinguished as a student athlete first. He has made every effort to achieve academic excellence. He takes a rigorous course load of AP classes and is a law academy participant with an eye on becoming a CHP officer. Also, Juan recently took initiative to seek an internship with the Department of Justice and was hired, and he is currently receiving great reviews. After graduation, he plans to attend either a UC or CSU to further support his dreams of entering into the field of law enforcement. Juan is a continual positive presence for his teams and his school. The Sacramento City Unified School District recognizes Juan Martyr as a stellar student.
That photobomb from there. Step in the middle. Juan, the microphone is yours. I'd like to say a few words. And it moves too, it goes up and down.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for this opportunity, and I would like to thank my teacher that nominated me. Don't know who that is yet, but I will figure it out. And I will continue to do what I do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You want to read this first?
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption, with the exception of technical problems on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Today's meeting will air Sunday, November 23rd at 9 a.m., Monday, November 24th at noon, and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located in the back of the community room and give it to Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Ross, prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Responses to questions by the public will be posted on the district's website prior to the next board meeting. Please limit comments during public comment to items not listed on the agenda. If you are found to be commenting on an item that is on the agenda, you will be asked to defer your item until it comes up on the agenda. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on the silent or vibrate mode.
Thank you. Item 4.0, item 5.0, announcements of action taken in closed session.
Yes, Mr. President, one announcement out of closed session by a vote of 4-0 with board members Hanson and Cuneo absent. The board approved settlement agreement in OAH case 2014-080318. That concludes my announcement, Mr. President.
Thank you. Item 6.0, agenda adoption. Vice President Pritchett.
Thank you. I'd like to pull a portion of item 9.1A regarding the master agreement for architectural services with the DC Architects.
Thank you. I need a second. I'll second it. All those in favor of pulling that item from the consent agenda item 9.1A, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. With that, I accept a motion to adopt the remainder of the agenda. I have a motion from Vice President Pritchett. Do I have a second? I'll second it. All those in favor of adopting the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Mr. Ross, are there any public comment?
Yes, we have 7 public comments on 7.0. I'll read the first 4 names. If folks can please line up behind the podium in the order you're called. Ralph Merletti, Nikki Malevsky, Grace Trujillo, and Angel Garcia.
Good evening, Superintendent Banda and Sac City School Board members. I'm Ralph Merletti from the Fruitridge area of Sacramento County. I wish to give a thank you to Board Member Diana Rodriguez for her welcome letter to whoever wins in the election, and her thanks to all the candidates for running and her information on other community events. By the way, I noticed today I'm currently only 3 votes behind the 4th place person, and the final vote count could come next week. Okay, everyone up there now should have a 3-page copy of the solar eclipse report that I've put together. This includes my report, a photo of the projected image taken by a teacher at St. Patrick Academy that while I was there having that on display, and a report from the editor of the SVAS newsletter. I'm still in the process of attempting to gather reports and photos from Sacramento City USD schools, specifically Earl Warren Elementary, Sutter Middle School, and George Washington Carver High School. So hopefully that will be available later. And meanwhile, happy Thanksgiving next week to everyone. Go Kings. Go Sacramento Kings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Morletti. Mm-hmm.
Good evening, Board. Superintendent Banda, President Wu, Nikki Malevsky, President of Sacramento City Teachers Association, and thank you again for allowing me to address the Board. This morning we sent this board and the superintendent a letter setting forth in clear and unambiguous language why the actions of the district and by its inaction this board have taken are unlawful by allowing the unilateral changes to health care plans of actives and retired teachers represented by the Sacramento City Teachers Association. The purpose behind this letter is twofold. First, to demonstrate in one place the legal and financial exposure this district faces by refusing to stop the implementation of the changes. As we have said repeatedly, the district's refusal to abide by an agreement that was ratified by this board creates a climate of mistrust that will be extremely difficult to ever overcome. Why should any teacher, parent, or student ever believe anything this district says when it can't be counted on to abide by an enforceable, signed agreement that was ratified by this board fewer than 2 months ago? The second purpose is to establish a foundation for accountability. This letter removes any ability of members of this board to at some time later down the road deny that you were unaware of the consequences of failing to intervene to stop this train wreck. This letter takes away that excuse. This board should be put on notice that we have every intention of enforcing our agreement. And by our, that means the agreement signed both by SCTA and the school district. And that you were given ample opportunity to intervene and to stop this before it occurred. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Grace Trujillo, and I have a son with special needs and one that attends Phoebe Hearst. We are here tonight as a CAC executive board speaking about the issues that we become aware of in October pertaining to the current Sacramento City Teacher Association collaborative bargaining agreement with regards to the inclusion of all special education students in Sacramento School District. We have provided a written comment for you as well as an attachment from the SCTA Collaborative Bargaining Agreement. See attached addendum 1, assigned item 18 for SCTA tentative agreement. Also, we have included attachment 2 for Appendix D relating to special education student inclusion. Appendix D sets forth the working and learning conditions for teachers and students involving special education students' inclusion. While the appendix was created back in 1994, over 20 years ago, it remains in the current contract. Appendix D outlines 3 types of inclusions and additional support for teachers: Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3. The inclusion shall be where one special education student classified as severely disabled is enrolled in regular education classes. Type 2 is a whole class collaborative inclusion. Type 3 is a special education class spread among regular education. We provided you with this information for you guys to review what we're talking about, and Angel will be telling you further information.
Good evening, board members, President Wu, and Superintendent Bonda. We are very concerned that Appendix D contains illegal clauses that are in violation of federal law, including the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, and also state ed code. The right to bargain collectively in schools is not a federal right, but one granted by the state of California. Such bargaining rights and the language used in current SCTA CBA, or collective bargaining agreement, interferes with an eligible student's entitlement under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, Section 504, and the ADA. In addition, the language that exists contributes to a mindset in the school community that it is the teacher's choice as to whether they will accept or receive a student with a disability, or provide inclusive settings in general and special education. The collective bargaining agreement further goes on to state that general education teachers have rights to, but are not required to attend IEP meetings. This is false. The language promotes unwillingness to support students' needs, IEPs, accommodations, and services, and lends itself to a school culture that does not recognize students with special needs as those who are entitled to learn and be educated alongside their non-disabled peers. More importantly, the language in this collective bargaining agreement fails to uphold the civil rights of students with disabilities and infringes upon their right to receive FAPE, or a free, appropriate public education, in the least restrictive environment.
Hi, I'm Angie Sutherland, and just to reference the language in Appendix D, if you look at clauses 1.1.4, 1.2.2, 1.3.2, they're underlined for you in your attachment. And there's language in there that states that a teacher can agree to receive or accept a student, and agree to full inclusion. So these statements do violate federal and state laws that support educating students in the least restrictive environment. We've provided you with the excerpts of the laws on pages 2 and 3 of your packets. Federal law provides that each local school district must ensure that to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are not disabled. Congress has specifically recognized the importance of education of special education students in regular class environments. State laws also provide that students with disabilities shall be offered special assistance programs that promote interaction with the general school population in a manner that is appropriate to the needs of both. The IEP team must document its rationale for placement in a setting other than the student's school and classroom, which she or he would otherwise have if they did not have a disability. In Clause 4.0, it states that regular education teachers have the rights to but are not required to attend IEP meetings. Federal law requires regular education teachers to attend every IEP meeting. So the language in the bargaining agreement is discrimination, and it promotes discrimination. And now Sarah will talk.
Good evening, board members, and good evening, Superintendent Banda. My name is Sarah Inman, and I have 2 children with special needs. We have learned as a group of the CAC about the teacher grievance settlement regarding Appendix D, and we understand that as part of the settlement, part of the agreement, that a work group is to be formed, and the work group is going to revise Appendix D, Section 1, to develop supports for teachers. The CAC made a request that parents be involved as part of that work group, and that request was honored. And the CAC is putting forth 2 members to serve on the work group, myself and Angie Sutherland, with Benita Aya as an alternative. We would like to know when this work group is going to convene to work towards revising Appendix D so that it will be non-discriminatory, and it will help to develop more supports for our special needs children. We think solutions must be enacted to remedy these issues. We request support from the school board and the superintendent to implement interventions. We ask the school district to consider the following recommendations. Number 1, a legal review of Appendix D with appropriate modifications to reflect legal provisions of the state and federal laws for students with disabilities. Number 2, an independent review of special education records to see where the past and current SCTA, CBA may have contributed to impeding students' right to be educated in the least restrictive environment. Number 3, improved supports. And number 4, mandatory periodic training. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, Sacramento City School Board members and President Wu and Superintendent Banda. My name is Adrian Marino. I am in 6th grade and I am 12 years old. I go to John Cabrillo Elementary School. I am in a general classroom for the most part. I have been in John Cabrillo since kindergarten. I also have a disability called autism. Autism sometimes makes it hard for me in school and hard for me to make friends and interact with others. But at Cabrillo, I have had lots of support from the students and staff. In 1st grade at Cabrillo, the teacher did not help me with what I needed and did not tried to understand me. She made things harder for me. She did not follow my IEP. Made it very hard for me to do well in school. The principal also did not help support me. For that year, I left to another school in a special day classroom. Until the next year, when I was available to be with a teacher that wanted to help me, and believed I could learn. I did not want to go in a special day class, so we decided that special day classes were not for me. But the teacher and principal made it hard for me to go to school at Cabrillo. The principal and teacher are not there anymore, which made it better for students like me. Now all staff at Cabrillo believes that students with disabilities should learn. Students who don't have should be in classes with students who don't have disabilities. My school includes me in activities, and it makes it easier for me to learn. I feel like any other John Cabrillo student. I just have to get some extra help sometimes. Since first grade, I improved my social skills, and I am able to control my frustration. I started to build my confidence. It took me a long time to get over feeling different. Last year, I spoke in a really low voice. I did not make that much eye contact, and I didn't speak to that much people. But things changed because my teachers believed in me and all students with special needs. This school year, I ran for and got into student council. I also ran for president. I read a whole speech out to the entire school. I practiced the speech in speech therapy, in resource classroom, and at home. I was disappointed when I did not win, but I still did come in second place. I am happy that I had the courage to run because I believed in myself. I am telling my story because teachers who do not want students with disabilities in their classrooms is wrong. Being in a general classroom helps me learn from other students without IEPs, but it also helps them learn about me. People with disabilities should live and work with everyone else. The teacher's contract should not give a choice if they want students with special needs in their classes. Is it wrong? Would it be different if a teacher said they didn't want a student in their class because they spoke a different language or they were poor? It is against the law for teachers to discriminate against students with disabilities. So I'm asking, please help students like me and change the teacher's contract to support and include all students. Thank you.
Sí, dígalo en español.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Gloria Pasillas.
Good evening. My name is Gloria Pasillas.
Tengo una hija con autismo que tiene 16 años.
I have a daughter with autism that's 16 years old.
Está en la escuela North California Preparatory School.
She is at Northern California Prep School, a non-public school.
Ella está cursando segundo año académicamente.
She's been there for 2 years.
Está en el 11 grado.
She is in 11th grade.
Hace un año que llegó a esa escuela.
It's been a year since she's been to that school.
Y En las recomendaciones de los maestros tenía un asistente dentro de la aula y fuera de la aula.
She, within the school, the classroom setting, she had an aide that supported her in and out of the classroom environment.
Pero se lo quitaron desde mayo y su razón es porque la niña avanzó.
They took the aide away in May because she had advanced and was progressing.
Yo digo que cómo es posible que se lo hayan quitado si la niña está cursando segundo grado y tiene problemas para leer, para socializar.
How could they take the aid away while she was making progress and she was talking, communicating, and succeeding?
No tiene terapia ocupacional.
She doesn't have occupational therapy.
Tiene 16 años y no se sabe abrochar los zapatos.
She's 16 years old and she doesn't know how to tie her shoes.
Necesita ayuda para cortar papel con tijera.
She needs assistance to cut scissors with paper.
El lápiz no lo agarra correctamente.
She doesn't hold on or have a tight pencil grip.
La letra es muy grande.
The letter is very large.
Y no califica para los servicios de terapia ocupacional.
And how could she not qualify for OT? That's her question.
Ahorita tengo una IEP para diciembre 2.
She has an IEP on December 2nd.
Están haciendo una, ¿cómo se dice? Assessment para a ver si le pueden dar un asistente, un aide.
They're doing an assessment to see if she qualifies for an aide.
Pero yo les pido a ustedes que me apoyen.
She's asking for support.
Porque mi hija necesita esa ayuda. Entonces, ¿cuándo va a avanzar la niña? Entonces, está retrocediendo.
Her daughter is advanced, needs to progress, and she's regressing.
Pues necesitamos los servicios apropiados para mi hija.
She needs the proper services for her daughter to succeed.
De terapia de lenguaje solo le dan 30 minutos.
In language, they only give her 30 minutes.
Y no es suficiente porque la niña no habla bien, no pronuncia bien y no sabe leer.
¿Qué es lo que dice?
A mi hija no sabe leer.
Her daughter doesn't know how to read.
Porque necesita el soporte, la pronunciación,
She
de
needs
más
the support
terapia.
and the pronunciation.
Necesitamos los servicios adecuados para ella.
Needs the proper services in order for her to succeed.
Y el entrenamiento a los trabajadores juntos para que se beneficie los niños.
They need the proper education for the teachers in order for her daughter to succeed.
Espero que sea escuchada mi voz para los beneficios apropiados para mi hija.
Hopefully, you guys will listen to her request on the services that she needs in order for her daughter to succeed.
Espero que me vaya bien en mi IEP del diciembre 2.
She's hoping that everything goes well in her IEP on December 2nd.
Todo lo apropiado para mi hija es lo que les pido solamente.
All she asks that her daughter gets the proper services and assessments in order for her to succeed.
Gracias.
Vice President Pritchard.
Ms. Batista?
Grace?
Grace? Ms. Batista? Can you just tell us one more time what school your daughter attends?
North California Preparatory School.
NorCal Prep School?
Yeah, prep school. It's a non-public school.
Otra cosita.
She forgot to add a couple.
Son muchas cosas que quisiera mencionarles, pero mi hija estuvo en una escuela pública en el 2008.
Her daughter was in a public school in 2008.
En la Kelly Greenwood.
Greenwood.
Estuvo de septiembre a los primeros días de octubre.
From September all the way to the beginnings of October.
Del 2008.
Of 2008.
La escuela no me ayudó nada, ni el distrito, solamente la niña la cambiaron de escuela a Cary Wenseo.
And she didn't have the proper supports at that school, so she went to another school site.
La niña tuvo mucha ansiedad. La niña no había hablado después del 2008, habló apenas en diciembre.
Since 2008, her daughter didn't talk until just recently.
Ella comenta que su maestra la aterrorizaba.
That she commented that her teacher terrorized her.
Y la niña lloraba al punto que cayó al hospital en febrero del 2008.
In 2008, her daughter was so stressed that she ended
2
up
semanas en el hospital psiquiátrico.
She was two weeks in the hospital for mental health.
De ahí,
from there,
obviamente no ha avanzado.
From there, she has not advanced.
No me han dado lo apropiado para mi hija.
She hasn't gotten the proper supports.
Toco una puerta.
She knocks at one door.
Me la cierran.
They close it.
Abro otra.
She opens another.
Y estoy presente aquí.
And she's present here.
Para que me ayuden lo apropiado para mi hija. Yo quiero un asistente.
She would like to have an assistant for her daughter.
Para que pueda seguir su lectura.
So she could continue with her reading.
Ella tiene una computadora en el salón, pero nomás la ve porque no sabe deletrear, espellear, por lo mismo que no sabe leer.
Sometimes she just says the sounds, but cannot blend the sounds because she needs the proper support.
Los reportes del maestro dicen que la niña está bien, que puede ser independiente.
The reports from the teacher says that she could be independent.
Yo tengo grabaciones de la niña.
She has recordings from her daughter.
Para tener prueba para ustedes de que cómo está la niña en la casa, en la escuela se limita por miedo a que la lleven al hospital o le mencionen la policía y ella se aterroriza.
She's terrified. Her daughter is terrified when she's at school. Yes, okay. When she's terrified and she's at school, that they could take her to a psychological hospital or take her to the police because she's been there. So just going to school causes her to do that.
Entonces, lo que quisiera es lo apropiado para mi hija. Quiero un asistente para que le den el apoyo y siga para adelante porque nunca va a pasar de segundo grado.
Yeah. She needs an aid to help support her daughter in order for her to be successful.
Gracias.
And thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ross? Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 8, a public hearing. Approve the request of State Board of Education to waive the evaluation requirements for teachers in extended day kindergarten program during implementation year for teachers of split classes for 2014-15 and for 2015-16 school years.
Good evening. Good evening, Superintendent Banda, Board President Wu, and members of the board. My name is Cindy Nguyen. I'm the Employee Relations Director in Human Resources Services, and I'm here tonight to present to you Board Item Number 8.1, Request to State Board of Education to waive evaluation requirements for teachers in extended day kindergarten programs during implementation year and for teachers of split classes for the 2014-15 and the 2015-16 school years. The evaluation waiver would only apply to teachers that are required to teach in extended day programs for their implementation year and for teachers of split classes for the 2014-15 and the 2015-16 school years. The State Board of Education requires that school districts requesting this waiver to publicly advertise an announcement. In addition, the District School Board of Education is required to hold a public hearing on the request for this waiver. As defined in the recently board-approved SETA tentative agreement, the district is seeking approval to apply for this waiver. Upon board approval, staff will submit the application to the State Board of Education. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Are there any public comments? Colleagues, do you have any questions? Vice President Pritchett.
Superintendent Banda, I had sent you an email in regard to looking into possibly adding in the parent participation preschool. Do you have any preschool under the early kinder? Have you looked into that?
But that's not part of
Oh,
this.
I'm sorry.
That's a different question. This is just to ask for a waiver of the requirement for
Oh,
the
okay.
teachers.
All right. Yes.
Any other questions? Then I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion from Member Arroyo. I have a second from Vice President Pritchett. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Consent agenda, item 9. I understand that we might have public comment.
Yes, President Wu, we have public comment on items 9.1C and 9.1F from Terrence Gladney.
Good evening, Board. Superintendent Banda. On 9.1C, I noticed that there are a multitude of bus drivers that are being hired. I don't know if we can get some clarification on what that need is. Is it because the students were moved to different schools? What routes are they serving? Is it just supplemental availability for field trips? The school that my daughter goes to, Cabrillo, a few years back, they absorbed the Alice Burney kids before it got repurposed as a Waldorf-inspired school. And part of that agreement, as far as I understand, was that there would be a bus route to bus Freeport Manor kids over, and that lasted about a year. And now those kids are either walking or trying to carpool. I see kids getting out of the car about 10 deep, in 2 or 4-door sedans, because that bus route was taken away. When there were bus routes restored a couple years ago, I talked to the transportation director and asked him what was his basis for restoring bus routes in certain areas, and he said that he read a newspaper article that railroad crossing deaths or dangers were of the utmost importance, so that was his sole basis. I asked him, had he looked at scattergrams for Megan's Law, offenders or sexual, in any of those dangers that our kids face that are walking up to and over a mile, and he had never considered it. So as we're hiring, a page or two worth of bus drivers, have you guys looked at restoring, those bus routes that were promised to those families who had their own kids, disenfranchised by the system? And I mean, some of them walked past the school that used to be theirs. That was their community, and it created a huge climate problem at Cabrillo, and some of you guys are well aware. And we parents have all endured it collectively. Now we are a family, but those wounds take time to heal, and I want to see those kids have the ability to get to school on time with a safe bus and not have to walk. So I would like that looked into and figure out if, as part of this, what's going to happen for those, not only just the 7 schools that just did close, but the ones who previously endured that as well. And then also, really quickly on 9.1F, I personally experienced a uniform complaint process. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the NFL. When players have an issue or whatever, they appeal to the body that punished them. And that's really what it feels like for a parent, honestly. You provide information, you complain, and this is obviously outside of some of the, let's say there's a personnel issue, and I've experienced that where I make a complaint against someone, I provide dates, instances, and occurrences, and I had that whole complaint forwarded to the person who I was complaining against. They are allowed to assess and review everything I complain upon and provide their own recollection of the issues, and then that's the basis on which the decision is made. I'm never allowed to, or parents are not allowed to rebut that. It's just basically that person's word. So it's really not conducive to trust, between stakeholders. In and of itself, as I see it written, the appeal also goes through the district staff. Obviously, CDE is the end game where you can go to, but a lot of people don't know that. They're going to a board or they're going to the district in trust, thinking that they're going to have their needs, reviewed and fairly assessed. So I would like that looked at to see if we can make it a little bit more equitable, to show stakeholders that they matter and that their concerns are valid, or at least they have an opportunity to have them fairly looked at. One of the other things in the uniform complaint procedures was about fees at schools. And some of the talk was about a 2-tiered system in education where you have basically fees set up to provide different educational opportunities. I know that fees exist for things like Slide Park and everything else, and I don't know that it's always stated that it's optional. So I would like you guys to be a little proactive and make sure that parents know that they don't have to pay those fees and it's not legal, because a lot of times parents have pride and they don't want to, tell the school, well, you know what, I'm unable to pay, so they scrape and possibly taking, other basic necessities off of their families, tables or clothes off their kids' back to make sure that they fit in, because they don't want to have their kid go through that experience, and it's not right. But also one more thing is that if we're talking about equity between schools and opportunities, if we have schools that require a certain number of parent volunteer hours, are we not creating the same disparity between the school climate? It may not be measured in dollars, but every school could benefit from authentic parent engagement or even forced parent engagement. But if we have some schools that require 40 hours in order for that student to go there, then that's something we should either do across the board or level the playing field and make sure that all kids have the opportunity and the ability to go to a school that has a good, solid parent engagement culture. Thank you.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Wu. I feel that Mr. Gladney's comments are very good, and I thank him for bringing them forward. And Superintendent, I wonder about the bus route information that Mr. Gladney presented to us today, and want to ask about the reality upon your staff if we could do some sort of research in the bus routes and how they're formed, and also which students are getting transportation and the reasons for it, all related back to his comments, his numerous comments about that. So is that going to be a strain on your staff? Is that just not a reality in the near future?
To look at it would not be a big strain. I mean, they'll take a little bit of time to collect some of that data. I think Mr. Gladney mentioned potentially returning some bus routes. That would be a possible strain in terms of the cost and which ones would be affected. But I think in looking at the data and studying it, if we make commitments to certain schools, because I know during the school closures there were certain commitments made to neighborhood kids that had to then go to another school, we can go back and make sure that we honored those commitments and that we're providing that. The reason that there's additional bus drivers on there is that we've been dealing, and not just us, but all the districts in this area have been dealing with shortage of bus drivers. So what you're seeing is adding bus drivers that we can use to substitute because we just don't have them. It's been such a severe problem for us that we started using our trainers to drive routes, and then that takes them off of preparing other folks to be able to drive. So that's the reason for the additional bus drivers. But we can look at the data. We'll be able to look at it and see and make sure that we honored our commitments to the parents, to the students, and to the communities.
Okay, thank you. And then to direct to President Wu, I've often questioned the uniform complaint process myself, and as a board member who's encouraged parents to utilize the uniform complaint process. It makes me curious as to why the board doesn't really get any of this information. But I do feel that the policy should be reviewed through a committee. We used to have a policy committee of the board, and I think that this would be one of the really good policies to undertake among many others. But I would like to see some type of information coming to the board in terms of how many uniform complaints have been filed, and a tracking system. Not necessarily that the board needs to see every single one of them, but some sort of tracking log that we know that they're going down the system. But that can't happen unless we amend policy to make it happen. So I want to encourage you to create some committees as well. Thank you.
Point taken. Thank you. Okay, that were all the comments for the consent agenda. Then I take a motion to move the consent. I have a motion to move the consent agenda. I have a second from Member Arroyo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to workshops. 10.1, Resolution number 2816 and Resolution number 2817, recognition of National School Psychology Awareness Week. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Wu. It pleases me to be the board member up here to present a resolution 2816 in recognition of the National School Psychology Awareness Week, which occurred on November 10th through 14th of this year. It's a very short resolution, and I'll read it. Whereas the week of November 10th to November 14th has been designated National School Psychology Awareness Week by the National Association of School Psychologists, or NASP, to highlight the importance of student well-being in the pursuit of academic achievement. And whereas the educated public services as the foundation of our democracy, and whereas psychologists, as well as teachers, counselors, librarians, social workers, and other certificated personnel, touch many people with a lasting effect. And whereas school psychologists provide a range of services related to students, academic achievement, and well-being. And whereas the field of psychology and job description and training of the school psychologist continues to expand. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education does hereby recognize the week of November 10th to the 14th as National School Psychology Awareness Week, and supports the important work and services provided by the National Association of School Psychologists and California State University, Sacramento, NASP student leaders. So at this point, I'd like to invite if these two individuals are here, Sheila Stein and Kara Crow, and Nikki Molesky, who represents SCTA as the president and is also a school psychologist. And I invite them to say a few words.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Stein, and I'm here representing the Sacramento State School Psychology Association and the National Association of School Psychologists. We want to thank the board for this proposed resolution, recognizing the hard work, the expertise, and the dedication of this district's school psychologists. We're elated that you are considering this proposal this evening. As you know, the School Psychology Association Awareness Week was last week, and as NASP student leaders, Kara and I just want to highlight for you a few key pieces from NASP's model for comprehensive and integrated school psychological services. The model describes the delivery of psychological services in the schools and what school psychologists are qualified to do given our education and our expertise. Furthermore, the model details 10 domains of practice and the services that can be provided. Of these, we believe there are 3 most salient at this moment in education. 1 is crisis preparedness and management, 2 is data-based decision-making, and then the 3rd is consultation and collaboration. School psychologists are knowledgeable in research related to the resilience and risk factors in learning and in mental health, and evidence-based strategies for effective crisis preparation and response.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kara Crow. I'd like to take the opportunity to discuss with you a few ways that school psychologists promote student achievement and support teachers and administrators in preparing students to be career and college ready. One aspect of a school psychologist training and scope of expertise is data-based decision-making. A critical part of making informed decisions is the effective use of data. School psychologists bring a sense of knowledge, of data collection and analysis to school improvement efforts. We can help school leaders and teachers to generate and interpret valuable student outcome data, make decisions regarding programs and interventions at the district, building, classroom, and individual student levels, monitor individual student progress in academics and behavior, collect and analyze data on risk and protective factors related to student outcomes. The capacity to both collect the right data and know what to do with the information is essential to meeting the needs of students and making adequate yearly progress and other mandated accountability measures. This is particularly important as schools shift from the previous state standards to the Common Core state standards in preparing our students to be career and college ready. Another critical role of a school psychologist is that of a consultant. We collaborate and consult with teachers on how to individualize instruction, manage classroom behavior, monitor student progress, evaluate classroom data, and adjust intervention and instructional strategies to make content accessible to every student. Teachers who consult with their school psychologists receive support for working with struggling students, improving classroom management, and teaching skills, and are more able to focus on effective instruction for all learners. Again, we'd like to thank the board of the Sacramento City Unified School District for considering the resolution to recognize your schools, your district school psychologist, and the work they do to support all learners. Thank you.
Well, I too wanted to thank you for recognizing School Psychologist Week, and as you all know how much I love being a school psychologist. I love working with the students in our district firsthand, not only providing assessment, but doing individual and group counseling, social skills, character education building, supporting our families when they were in crisis, or being there on the day when the Twin Towers fell and being in every classroom and helping our students through those crises and our teachers through those crises, or being there when someone had passed away, like our recent loss, George Washington Carver. Those things are very, very important roles for school psychologists can help our school district to do. And as we've talked about, increasing our tier 2 intervention based on data that we can support our students' learning far greater if we have the use of supports in our classrooms. And as our whole child policy also calls for a great increase of support for our students in our classrooms. I would really hope that the district would consider that and consider school psychologists in that role. NASP has a ratio recommended of school psychologists, one school psychologist to 500 to 700 students. And our district is about 1 to over 2,000 students. And we've been there for a long time, and we've been higher, we've been a little lower, but it's been really, really undercut. And we do not have enough school psychologists to serve the needs of our students, and I hope that we can do that in the future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Member Royal.
Thank you, President Wu, and thank you, Nikki, for those words. And I do remember a few years ago when, in the midst of the worst budget cuts that we had to face in the district, the staffing ratios of psychologists did come up because as we were laying off, I mean, they did take a hit. And I remember the conversations that I'd had with some of the school psychologists. And that's when I really learned the value, and not just the value of the services they provide, but it's an all-around service because it keeps us as a district from liability, from not complying with a lot of the laws and regulations that we have to follow through. So they're not only providing a valuable service to the student in terms of direct services, but also to the district to keep us in compliance with so many different laws and regulations. And so I think that the value of psychologists also need to be brought up and in light of what we need to do with more counselors and more nurses in our schools. And I think that I look forward to have those conversations not only with the superintendent but the rest of the board as hopefully we come out of a really bad financial crisis and start rebuilding the district to consider positions like psychologists and nurses and counselors as valuable partners and members of the team that we need in the district to provide the well-rounded service that every child deserves. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you, Member Royal. And I'd like to ask Member Rodriguez if she could address Resolution number 2817 as well.
Yes, thank you, President Wu. Resolution 2817 is almost identical to 2016 with the exception of the last whereas. Whereas the certificated staff overcome obstacles and challenges daily to make a difference in the lives of students and family. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education commends our school psychologists and encourages parents and the community to recognize the efforts of the certificated staff as we celebrate the week of November 10 through 14 of 2014 as National School Psychology Awareness Week. I do want to encourage our board to have an aye vote on these two resolutions, and as soon as they're voted on and approved, I would invite Sheila Stein, Kara Crow, and Nikki Molesky to come forward and accept the framed resolutions that we have available ready for them.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments? Okay, so I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Vice President Pritchett. I have a second. Second by Member Rodriguez. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Total time. Thank you. Item 10.2, and congratulations. Item 10.2, update on social and emotional learning and whole child board policy. Ms. Lee. This is an information item.
So as they're coming up here, I'll just comment very quickly. As the board knows, very familiar with that, this district is well invested into social emotional learning. It's something that has been in this district now for a few years. And we continue to add on and grow in that area. And so this year we've added, I think it was 16 new schools.
17.
17 new schools as a new cohort. And now we're in the majority of our elementaries. So tonight we'd really like to do a very comprehensive update. And Mike Seed's going to lead that. But I think it's going to be a full team effort to really explain not only what's happening with SEL, but what we plan to do with it and going into the future. So with that, I'll hand it over to Maxine.
Great. Good evening, Board President Wu, members of the board, Superintendent Banda. I'm very pleased to be back to give you an update on our social emotional learning work in Sac City. As you know, we're in our third year of implementation and are gaining tremendous momentum in terms of building a common language for SEL, creating structures for school-wide implementation, and providing professional capacity for our staff and community members. Because of your leadership and unwavering insistence on creating positive learning experiences for our students, SEL continues to flourish as we build resonance and relevance to academics, school culture and climate, and foundational skills for college, career, and life success. As you probably saw in the Sacramento Bee on Monday, I had to note that in case you didn't see it, we are leading the way for systemic social emotional learning across the United States. And isn't that a great thing for our children in our community, who so very much need us to model, as we're teaching those skills, they also need us to model those tremendous competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and good decision-making. Our journey, however, is just beginning, and we're so excited to share with you some of the examples of what SEL looks like in action. So because of that, tonight I've invited some of my colleagues from the school sites, some leaders from Cohort 2, to share with you examples of some of their work and some of the things that are happening at their sites. So tonight I have with me Daniel Hernandez from Ethel Phillips Elementary School, Martine Ramirez, Assistant Principal from Rosa Parks K-8 School. I have Ted Appel from Luther Burbank High School, and I have Daniel Roletti from Oak Ridge Elementary School. I have the clicker. Oh, here we go. One of our challenges is still learning to use the clicker, but we'll figure that out. So tonight we'll focus on some accomplishments from year 2, spotlight and highlight some of our Cohort 2 schools and the work that they're doing, look at some of the challenges and lessons that we've learned in the 2.5 years that we've begun our implementation, and also begin to look forward to year 3 in terms of what lies ahead for the work that needs to be done. So to revisit our implementation plan in Sac City, as you know, in year 1, we began with our awareness building, and we started with 4 schools called the CKM Network Schools. Year 2 was really about integration. How do we get this into our school sites at a deeper level? We brought on 16 of the receiving schools, but in fact, we ended up with 21 schools. Year 3 is our expansion year. This is gearing up to go district-wide. we brought on for our cohort 3 17 schools, most of whom are from the JFK network schools. The plan is that moving forward to year 4, 5, and 6, that we will roll out the rest of our schools in cohorts each year until all of our schools are on board implementing social-emotional learning. Again, as a reminder, some common definition for us, social-emotional learning, or SEL, provides the structure and process for adults and students to develop fundamental emotional and social competencies and experiences to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. All of that of which should build and deepen a positive school climate. These 5 core competencies are the framework for the work that we're doing around social-emotional learning. So your self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making are our framework for moving forward. So in looking at some of our year 2 accomplishments, while we've done many, many things, these would be the key highlights for our accomplishments. Our leadership teams from cohort 2 were all trained in the Castle's theory of action. They met once a month for 2 hours for 8 months last year and developed their implementation plans. All of the CKM network and cohort 2 schools received evidence-based curriculum training, and so all of our 25 schools, so that's CKM and cohort 2 schools, are all systemically teaching SEL lessons. This is monumental for the CDI, the Castle CDI group, and certainly it's monumental here in Sacramento. Over 2,000 of our school staff, parents, community members received SEL trainings. All of our principals, assistant principals, site instructional coordinators, and district leadership staff received 2 trainings, one for social-emotional learning awareness and one the integration of SEL in Common Core. This, again, is also a key accomplishment for our district and certainly for the CDI work. We've also embedded SEL into the graduate profile. You'll hear a little bit more tonight in the graduate profile presentation, also embedded in the Guide to Success. And we also worked on a core competency assessment rubric for our students, which we will begin refining and using this year. So in year 2, we really worked hard on getting our schools to systemically implement social-emotional learning centered on these core dimensions. So the explicit instruction of SEL skills, the infusement of SEL into instructional and pedagogy, infusing SEL and embedding it into curriculum, standards, and assessment, the Common Core standards, and really looking at SEL practices beyond the classroom in terms of culture, climate, parent engagement, all grounded in a really strong, solid foundation of professional development. So tonight, our schools will share an example of some of the work that they're doing around each of these dimensions so that you can see what SEL in practice looks like at our school sites. Danny Roletti will come up to talk about SEL curriculum.
Good evening, everyone. I'll take a brief moment to share with you some of the things we've done around curriculum at SEL at Oak Ridge Elementary School. We got to a place with SEL kind of organically. I can't recall how long ago it was, maybe about a couple years ago. The admin team and some of the support staff read a book by Paul Tough titled How Children Succeed. And in the book, Paul Tough describes the importance of focusing on non-cognitive skills at a school site, things like zest, self-control, social intelligence, grit, curiosity, optimism, The importance of that at a school site in terms of focus is also equally important as academics. We read that book, we saw it, we loved the words, grit, zest. It just felt like it had different appeal to it. And that kind of led to a new character education program. And then also at the same time, we were also looking at the work that Castle was doing in the district with SEL, the Cohort 1 schools, and started to develop our own SEL circle. We felt like owning it and doing things on making things authentic and real for our site was kind of important to us. So as you can see there in the slide, that was kind of like our grounding for social emotional learning at Oak Ridge. And then we looked at the practices we already had on campus, being an inclusive practices site, being a school that incorporates positive behavior interventions and supports. We have counseling and mentoring through our student support center on site, and trying to see what are all the different elements that we have at our school that can kind of lead to a holistic approach through SEL. Then we figured out what are the next steps in terms of enhancing it and making it better. So, we incorporated also restorative practices and justice a couple years ago, and finding out how do we, use that as another element to classroom management, community, working with students, working with families, and trying to just focus on the whole child. And so kind of how it looks is there isn't necessarily a set curriculum, unfortunately, but what we do have is teachers developing Common Core sentence frames and question starters to ensure that the Common Core piece and the SEL are combined at the same time. Teachers going on YouTube, finding videos that can relevant or that are relate to the students. We're also incorporating brain-based science, so students are talking about the amygdala and knowing how once you offset your amygdala and get that a little bit, off your kilter, you're emotionally going to be frustrated, and how to then control that self. In the article that Maicy had mentioned, a teacher was in the article and talked about how bullying and SEL and all your experiences in your past can tie together, and so having students be educated on those elements of that. Our approach mostly is looking at the pedagogy and the practice, so theory and also the practice of what it looks like in the classroom. On our character education traits, we actually have our teachers 3 times a year assess the students and give a kind of a SEL snapshot, kind of like a grade, if you will, on where the students are at with their zest, social intelligence, and grit and gratitude. And then we're able to actually this year start having those discussions with our families during parent conferences, so that way families are starting to see what we're discussing and sharing, and so that way we can focus on a strength and maybe a weakness with the students. Through our Student Support Center, every month at the beginning of the week, we have a new character trait for each month. Our support staff will go in and do a kickoff activity with the class, kindergarten through 6th grade, so it's systematic school-wide. And the posters you see there are posters that are up all year long, and they're an example of what the class discussed when it comes to grit. And so what's really nice to see at our school is that we have K through 6 students talking about grit, social intelligence, curiosity, optimism. Every classroom you go into, you will see elements of SEL character board. It's just a nice grounding for our school in terms of supporting the whole child. We're really proud of the work. It's hard work. It's been countless hours. It's a process. It's taken years to get to where we're at. And we know that we're always trying to figure out how do we continue to make it better, and what are the next best practices, resources available to add to our program.
Martina Ramirez from Rosa Parks to speak to instructional practices.
First of all, I want to say good evening. Buenas tardes. I'm going to reinforce some of the stuff that our colleague here, Mr. Valeri, has shared. At Rosa Parks, I'm going to say that some of our work began about 4 years ago when we first became a priority school. It really helped us to create a place that was focused on relationships. Not only that, but it began with our mission. So I'm going to go and share our mission with you. Rosa Parks, a community of resilient individuals equipped with the knowledge and skills to create pathways to opportunities in life. And that's what's got us started with this work. This allowed us to really facilitate and launch the value in relationships, not only in our academics, but also in our discipline that focused on restorative justice. Also on our social awareness among the students on the quad, on the blacktop. Originally, we probably had maybe a third of the students actually on the blacktop. They would stay in their own smaller cliques on the quad. And today, if you go to Rosa Parks, you have kids everywhere. You see them spread out through the whole school, upstairs in the clubs, on the quad, and on the blacktop. With that said, it has really helped us to launch the SEL activities at our staff meetings, led by student government, by our administration, by our student support center, and also even teachers. Our own teachers are doing the work. And I think that that's what's going to help us to really sustain this SEL work through the leadership of our teachers and our students. That takes us to our SEL vision that we helped create about a year and a half ago with the help of CASO, Dr. Montenegro, and Ms. Sue. At Rosa Parks, our vision is to build a safe and collaborative learning community. We strive to help students become independent problem solvers that respect themselves and the community around them. So that's the road we're on. Not to mention, the second step curriculum also has really helped us launch this work in the classroom, because now teachers don't have to spend hours creating the curriculum. As you know, creating curriculum takes a lot of time. And so that second step curriculum also has helped us, and the training has really helped us to make it happen. And not wait 2-3 years down the line, because as you know, it takes time to build these tools that really help, and students actually can connect with them, especially the videos. If you haven't watched any of those videos, please take a few minutes to watch some of those videos. They're very relevant, and the kids really can relate to these videos. So those are some very good tools. Lastly, most recently, one of the activities we've been doing is called the SEL Superstar Breakfast. And if you see it up there, the Celebrating Student Success, that really has helped us to acknowledge students at all levels, whether the low academic or high academic, but at all levels, students by their peers and sometimes by their teachers are nominated for one of the 5 core competencies in the classroom, out in the cafeteria, on the playground. And then finally, our SEL memo box that's given our students a voice and really helped us to kind of get a gauge of where they're at in the classroom, outside. And so we use that as a tool to really create professional development back into the staff meetings. So like that, they see it coming from the students and not only a top-down. Thank you.
Now, Danny Hernandez from Ethel Phillips with Parent Engagement.
Good afternoon or good evening. I just wanted to say that this presentation, we worked on it a bit, and my component has to do more with parent engagements because we see the similar components at each site. I wanted to share a letter. It's quite lengthy, so I'm going to summarize it. One of our parents who wanted to share with you her experience. Her name is Annabelle Soto. She has a son who was struggling with some anxiety, and he would lose his self-control. And so with the help of a program called Dinosaur School, which we had at our school site last year, he learned the skills to control himself, the self-awareness first of he's feeling anxious. And then he led to where he was able to figure out how to control himself and then make proper decisions. Well, all of these are components within SEL. And the first day of school, Annabelle Soto, parent, came to me and said, I really want you to know how much this has helped. My student came home after the first day of school saying that he felt this anxiousness coming on. And with the tools that came from specifically the support, which I think of as a second tier level of SEL, we were able to, or he was able to then get back into the classroom and maintain his day from exploding. And so she wanted just to let you all know that she hopes that this kind of program can continue because she knows that these opportunities come around and really support the families. In particular, in her case, she then was able to participate in a parent component with our counselor at the time and work on her own issues that she claims that she dealt with since a young child and never really worked out. And so her ability to now self-manage, become self-aware, and problem solve are now in her life, and now she's able to use those with her children. And this is really where I hope that the SEL component in every school site can grow to, where we're not just working with, all of these components are valuable, but we're not just working with the instruction in the classroom as our first opportunity to teach students how to have the social and emotional learning necessary to grow, but also then to have a second level and more support in those cases where it's needed. And then in those situations where we have even more need, that we can continue to support that. Because we're at that stage right now where we're seeing enough support that we're looking and seeking the next level. So thank you for your time.
Now, Ted Appel from Luther Burbank High School to speak to the embedding of Common Core and SEL.
Good evening. While the attainment of social and emotional skills are important as an end in itself, they're also an essential component of access to and attainment of Common Core standards. Take, for example, one of the standards for math practice, which states students construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. The attainment of the standard is developed through math conversations, students discussing, supporting, questioning, and disagreeing with the reasoning of others towards solving complicated math problems. SEL lessons teach students the language of academic discourse, which enables them to constructively engage in these conversations. You can imagine a math conversation that begins with, "That's stupid," has little potential for a discussion on exponential polynomial expansion. So instead, students say things like, "My idea builds upon what you just said," or "I understand your idea for a solution to this problem, but couldn't it also be solved in some other ways?" Using sentence frames such as these also are the entryway to the math conversations, which are fundamental to the math standards. This is just one example of how social emotional skills are key components of our students' academic achievement with the Common Core. Okay.
So while we know that social emotional learning is good practice for teaching and learning, and backed by substantial research, as noted by the Castle Research, we also know that we need to look closer at how it's impacting our students and teachers in Sacramento City Unified School District. So some preliminary anecdotes and data from our cohort 1 and 2 schools tell us that with SEL, the systemic implementation of SEL, we've had an increase of creating a common language among our students and teachers, systemic and explicit instruction of SEL skills, the increase of intentional focus on building positive relationships between our students and teachers, and an increase in interest in restorative practices. Also decrease in behavior referrals and decrease in suspensions. So while we've had some successes over the course of the last 2 years, we've also encountered some challenges and some lessons learned from our work. And we have Ted Appel, Danny Roletti, and Danny Hernandez, who will speak to some of our challenges and lessons learned.
So the challenge of structures for collaborative opportunities is not unique to the SEL initiative, but it certainly is critical. Staff development needs to continue, and for that to happen, there needs to be time. Opportunities for teachers to work collaboratively, developing their own social emotional competencies, and learn ways to integrate SEL into the various curriculum is essential, and there has to be within the schedule of a school day or a school week, time for teachers to collaborate. And I think it needs to be a priority as we look forward into the years ahead, how we are going to create time for teachers to engage in the collaborative process necessary to move an initiative such as this forward.
When we initially started working with SEL at Oak Ridge, restorative practices wasn't one of the first things that we had thought about, but we got to that place because we knew it was important for the students to stay in the classroom and learn and figure out a way, a different approach to address student incidents or student behaviors that maybe were inappropriate that normally would have gotten sent out of the classroom, suspended, and sent home. So we led to restorative practices, and we found that SEL was a good grounding because they go hand in hand in terms of community, working with other people, looking within yourself. But some of the challenges that we occurred in terms of initially implementing it at Oak Ridge was the mindsets of the adults working with the students. It's a shift in terms of how you approach student misbehaviors. Something that's non-punitive, something that's looking at a different way to hold a kid accountable and support their overall growth. Something that you do with the children, not to the children. So that was a challenge for us in figuring out how do we continue to get at that with our teachers, with our staff. So we had to, have a lot of discussions at staff meetings, leadership meetings on topics of race, equity, looking within their personal experiences as they were kids and how they were raised and at school, because that had to shift their thinking about, okay, this kid, if they made a mistake at school, maybe did something that could warrant a suspension or something, well, how can we get about it differently? And how can we address everyone that was involved, whether it was a class, other students? And so there was, I think, a challenge, and lessons learned was a lot of theory and the idea of this, restorative practices, but also, too, we've been able to get leverage this past year or so and a half because we've been able to have some meat to it. So having someone on campus that can kind of be the person to implement a peace circle or to be the first person to address the harm and talk with these students, and then developing common language, having documents that we can kind of refer to and use along the way. That's been very helpful in terms of now actually getting more staff ownership in this theory of restorative practices, and we're seeing positive gains in terms of a calmer campus, students in classroom more, families are more in tune, and there's more authentic relationships as we continue to work on that. Thank you.
So when it comes to sustainability, we talked about making this not an isolated initiative, but more so incorporating this into our everyday component of education. And I think of equity and many other things, but I also think back to my personal experience growing up, and many of you may have had this, but I'm from a Spanish-speaking family where we were told to be educados, which means educated, and it has a different connotation when you hear that in Spanish, which includes to be a good person, to act appropriately amongst adults, act appropriately everywhere you go. And I think in some cases, be educated in English does not have that same component, and I hope with SEL becoming part of our education, we now can say educate yourselves, just like we would say in Spanish, and it has the same connotation, including all the social competencies that we've shared with you today. Thank you.
So what's ahead for year 3? This is year 3. We continue to work with our cohort 3 schools to develop their capacity to lead SEL systemically. We will be working with ARNE to build an accountability structure that will look at the impact of our work for the last 3 years. Our leadership team, which is a very diverse group of folks, we have students, parents, teachers, administrators, community members. we'll continue to look at, review, and draft a whole child policy that's very centered on social emotional learning that will come to the board in the spring of 2015. This is our third year of our grant, and so we will be looking at the renewal process, and we are in a very good place to renew for 3 more years, hoping that I'll be able to come back and say, yeah, we got it. And also an SEL summit that we plan for our community to really begin to reach out to collaborate with, have conversations with, and begin to build a coalition around the power of relationships, not just in Sac City, but within the Sacramento area, with our partners, with civic leaders, and with everyone in and around that impact children, because they are an important part of who we are. So we thought that we would leave you with some thoughts from our students, and I want to acknowledge the Oak Ridge team for putting together this fantastic video on student voice and what it means for them as far as SEL.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see,
control is when you control your mind. And it's when, like, if you want to just go fight someone and just take your anger out on someone, it's like not really, because it's called control. Self-control is important to have because when you grow up and in life, you can't get a job by doing that. You'll just like, no one will accept you.
I can count on you like
Grit is never giving up, because once you try it, you can get better at it and try the stuff that you've been wanting to do. Chaos is when you wonder about something, because if you, like, say I wonder about nature or something, I would never know what it meant if I wasn't curious about it.
And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me.
Optimism is happiness that you're enjoying, happy, and happiness helps by showing everybody that you're enjoying it and everybody can enjoy it too. Optimism is gonna help me in life, because if I'm happy and something wrong going around here, then I can go talk to that person and make them happy too. Zest is a character trait that is used to use excitement for a subject or thing. You can use zest for riding a bike if you're doing something new, and like you are encouraging yourself to do something new. Like if you are doing something, maybe trying to ride skates, you're showing zest. You want to do it. You want to accomplish that. Zest is important to life, because without zest, you have no encouragement of yourself.
Gratitude is like saying, appreciating everything that other people do for you. Because so everybody will know that you're grateful and thankful for everything that you appreciate.
And I know when I need
Social intelligence is
that's what friends are supposed to do. Oh, yeah. You can count on me, 'cause I can count on you. There comes a time when we heed.
Thank you.
And we have public comment, I believe.
We have 2 comments on this item from Terrence Gladney and Angie Sutherland.
Good evening again, Terrence Gladney. I'm on the SCL leadership team as well as on the planning committee for the summit. So I have the pleasure of knowing a bunch of these individuals, not even just through the SCL initiative, but also through the Parent-Teacher Home Visit Project. Oh, cool! The clock is not going to start, and then it starts. You guys know, all the things I'm involved in, everything, how passionate I am about children. Sometimes in the work that I do as an advocate, adults can be frustrating. So I had one of those weeks last week, So what I do to restore myself is usually I go to Cabrillo and I hang with my daughter and her friends and kids on the playground, and then I'm just encapsulated, by the power and the energy and the spirit of children. I had a couple of other things that I need to do, and one of the things that I did this week was I had the pleasure. I wasn't even expecting it, but I went by Oak Ridge and saw Danny, because I had just seen him not too long ago at the Parent-Teacher Home Visit Project conference, and excuse me, and I was just advising him that there's a function coming up and asking for his support and getting his parents and students out, and we started talking and connected some more, and his eyes lit up. He said, "Hey, you want to go to some classrooms?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." And his eyes, he just lit up, and his spirit just radiated. He was just excited, and I saw he was excited. He gave me just this full tour of his school, and everything you guys saw in the video, it can be captured right now. Like, if the kids are there and the teachers are there, that's what you'll see. And I saw that, and I saw different classrooms, different grade levels. I saw kids with energy. I saw culture. Every piece of signage you guys saw, he let me know that stuff is there for the year. It's not, for inspections or reviews. It's part of their culture. He started sharing stories about children and how they're learning about the function of the brain and how that's inspiring and driving their interactions with each other. I saw some of the adults that I saw at the Parent-Teacher Home Visit Project conference, and their energy is just infectious. And, we hear a lot about all the different things that are being placed down on school sites. I think that, Danny is doing a great job as a leader. To not only, drive those initiatives, but inspire and empower his teachers. He told me about how his teachers are creating a lot of the work that's there as well. So it really is a collaborative environment. He has individuals who are parents there, who were there as volunteers, now part of the process. And I think that that's what we need to move towards, is empowering people at all levels of the solution that we're capable of presenting, whether it's students, whether it's parents, whether it's board members, and be able at some point to stand together. But, I just thank Danny, just because he really is creating trust in his school, and hopefully we can radiate that across the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gladney.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angie Sutherland, and my daughter is in 3rd grade at Hollywood Park. And I just want to thank all of you guys for all of your work. Social and emotional learning is something that's so important. I think it's more important than actually academic learning in many ways. So thank you so much. And I feel very connected to the school I'm at. Hollywood Park is in the cohort 2, I believe, for social and emotional learning. And as a parent, I've felt really connected with the school and welcomed. And I think my daughter also feels that way. She's been able to participate in things that in the past she would be in a lot of trouble. And so even like she stays after school for Girl Scouts and for movie nights, and we don't have to be there with her anymore. It used to be that if we weren't there, she wasn't allowed to do it. So I think it's the school culture must be different, because it's like a 360 change in her, as well as the wonderful teacher she has, who really models the kind of positive interaction that social and emotional learning is all about. The non-punitive approach, and involving her in instead of just sending her out of the room, they talk about it. Like, what do you think you could have done differently? Or what do you think that other person is feeling? And what if you did, what do you think you could do, and how do you think they would feel if you did that? So I just wanted to just say thank you so much, and I'm happy that it's being renewed, and that I hope social and emotional learning can be expanded to more schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Southern. Any other questions, colleagues? Member Arroyo?
Thank you, President Wu. I'm not quite clear. Can you explain that part about? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just going to keep your sheet here because it has awesome. It's a good start, and you know what? I'm going to keep it here because I'm going to make a commitment to improve my way of communicating. I think that it's a phenomenal presentation on the work and the commitment of staff that is doing within the district, and it's a very. If anybody thinks about it, it's like a duh. It makes sense, right? But how to bring something so amorphous, you could say, right, that it's difficult to gauge or it's difficult to quantify, such as character or attitude, to the daily lives of kids, right? And I'm really hopeful that it's not only about the children, but also the staff, and that it permeates through the district from board all the way down. I think that we all can learn and, take it upon us, to improve the culture and the climate throughout the district. So thank you very much for all the work that you do, and look forward to hearing more about how things progress. I'm really hopeful that this really does move district-wide, and that we learn from how it's rolling out and what else we can start doing to reinforce it. I catch myself when I deal with folks that are younger than I am, because I was brought up in a particular way, right? Very disciplined, and so it's very easy to fall into that trap, right? Of like, well, if I went through it, and I'm fine, it must be okay. But it misses the point that there's a completely different way of doing things that are. If I could have learned so many of these things at a younger age, what impact would have done in my life. And I think that this is really, 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 really good to see it being implemented for children at all levels. And so thank you for your work, and look forward to keep on working with you on that.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Wu. I know many of you recognize I had a big smile on my face while you were presenting. This is just a kind of a really good moment for me, and I will explain it a little bit. It's no secret that my oldest daughter was educated all her life in Catholic private school, and I actually worked in the Catholic school for 4 years. And I reflected back as you were presenting to a conversation that superintendent wasn't the superintendent then. He was on the interview process with us, Superintendent Raymond, and I, as I was driving him to lunch during his visit, and he asked me, what is it that I need to know about this district? And of course, one of the things, and Mr. Lawrence is in the audience, so of course I'm going to mention it, but one of the items that I did mention to him about was Parent-Teacher Home Visit Project. But then I also mentioned to him, I said, whatever happened to the golden rule in education? I was taught it when I was little, and we just don't have character building skill, character building type of things ingrained in our education in the public schools. And I really feel that our schools could benefit from that. And he took note of it. And he did, and I told him my silly thing. And as I told him, I go, Jonathan, it just doesn't cost any money. It costs a mind shift is all what it costs. He later came back to me, goes, I found this program and it's going to cost money, Diana. So here we are 3 years into this. And, I smile because it is getting into our schools. We are having these character building events happening across our district. And it does involve and engage the parents. And I took note of the challenges that you were having. And I reflected back when I was parent of my oldest child and when I was experiencing those type of parent-child difficulties, and how the principal and how the teachers and the counselors were all very good about not giving me advice and telling me what to do, but reflecting back on those character traits. You know, how do you think that, you know, we could show a more respectful relationship here? You know, how do you think that we could help her be more honest with herself, you know, about achievement and all of this stuff? It had nothing to do with religion. It had everything to do with the child and the family and how we could institute values. So when we're encountering these issues, why are we reinventing the wheel here within Sac City when we have really good partners in our community? You know, we have Christian Brothers and Jesuit, St. Francis for our high schools that are already so ingrained in all of this stuff. We have many K through 8 schools in the Catholic system that you could go to and find these models. How do you overcome the what you're experiencing right now? So I encourage you to go out and find some of those solutions. I know for a fact there's a couple of our K through 8 schools that are going half days every Friday so that they can have more collaborative time with their teachers. And you know, parents don't mind, and they're paying for that education. So, you know, how do we build more time for our teachers is a good question. It's going to take some building to get to that point. But hey, if those guys could do it, we could do it too here at Sac City. You know, it's easy once we all get on board with it. So I'm really excited. I like seeing this move forward. I thank you all for your work. You know, and we have all across the spectrum here. So, and thank you, Maisie, as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Member Saito.
I'd like to piggyback on. We actually used many of these phrases in my English class today since we're heavily influencing Common Core in our classrooms. I remember when I first heard of SEL just last year when SAC was working with them to make people more aware of what SEL is. And I did really like the idea of SEL at first when I first heard it because it teaches people empathy. It teaches people to be more open with their emotions and to express your opinion. It teaches people these things. It doesn't only teach the students, it teaches the parents, as you said, parent engagement, also the teachers, how to do this as well. One thing I also really admired about SEL is that it also heavily influenced perseverance, which I think that students and myself really do need to have perseverance, especially in this time in our lives, even through the toughest of times. It teaches you to be resilient and to bounce back even after what life has thrown at you. So, thank you.
And I want to thank you all, and I want to piggyback on what my colleagues have also said. But I was, when I first arrived here to Sac City Unified School Board, member Cuneo and I were asked to sit on an interview with Castle. And I don't know if we had a great contribution, but I'm glad that we were contributors to earning that grant. And I think that in obtaining that grant, I think you all have really excelled beyond what I was dreaming about for this district. And I'm looking forward to continuing this, and I hope that we are successful in obtaining another grant and maybe utilizing what we have to reinforce for Castle what SEL is meant to be and maybe take it on the road across the nation, because I'm very proud of what you all have done. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Are you asking a question?
Yes.
Did I give you the podium before? Okay.
Yes, it's a quick question. It's just on in the future, we'd love to learn more about how restorative justice will be kind of layered into it, and that will be a conversation that I look forward to having with you on the side. Thank you.
And I want to share that Cohort 2 is beginning some conversations around using SEL as that foundation to launch restorative practices, and we're having those conversations this year.
Excellent. Thank you. Item 10.3, Sac City Unified School District Graduate Profile. And this is a conference item.
Good evening, Board President Wu, Superintendent Bonda, and members of the board. I am joined by Teresa McEwen, Director of High School Redesigned, Matt Turkey, the Principal of School of Engineering and Sciences, and John Fleming, the lead teacher of Johnson Corporate Business Academy at Hiram Johnson High School. Tonight, we're pleased to present to you, as proud parents, the district's graduate profile and the grade band benchmarks. And you'll see why in a few moments, why I used the word proud. In doing so, we will provide context by sharing the rationale and giving you an overview of both the profile and the accompanied benchmarks. We will address some early implementation activities that have begun, and we will highlight a couple of the programs. And lastly, we will outline next steps. So why develop a graduate profile? In examining the national and international landscape, we have come to realize that globalization and modernization are rapidly posing new and demanding challenges to individuals and societies alike. Additionally, there is a clarion call for students to be equipped with 21st century skills. IBM surveyed approximately 1,500 CEOs about the skills that matter most in the global market. There was a resounding response, which included but not limited to the 4 C's: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and innovation, and all 4 thread the SEL competencies that were just shared with you. All these perspectives, including not just SEL, but also the 21st Century Skills Framework, the SCANS report, which is the Secretary's Commission on Achieving Necessary Skills, as well as the National Assessment Governing Board report on academic preparedness. All of these perspectives have helped to influence the development of our graduate profile. Another key driver that propelled us to develop the graduate profile is the focus of Pillar 1 of our strategic plan, which calls for us to prepare and equip our students with the knowledge, skills, dispositions, attitudes, behaviors needed for a successful transition to college or to the workplace. So, to provide clarity and have a shared common understanding of what it means to be college and career ready, we engaged in a series of collaborative sessions with key stakeholder groups. Each group was asked to identify attributes, behaviors, knowledge, skills, just for them to paint a picture as to what are the essentials that would need for students that would need to have that would poise them for success beyond our grade K through 12 program. So to guide their process, we asked the question that you now see on the screen. When we say college and career ready student, what simply comes to mind? So we did not front load them, we just quickly asked them to paint the picture for us. So at this time, Teresa McEwen will come and share with you not only the timeline, but also the responses and how we continue to engage our stakeholders.
Good evening, members of the board, President Superintendent Bonda. The journey to our graduate profile began in fall 2011 with stakeholder engagement. For several months, as Dr. Roberts was saying, members of the academic office asked the question, when I say college and career readiness, what comes to mind? Preliminary learning domains and indicators were identified. The work resumed in fall 2012. A graduate profile committee was convened to refine the learning domains and indicators and prepare the final draft we share tonight. Stakeholder engagement at this time included a presentation to the Board of Education. After a summer rest, the SCUSD Graduate Profile Committee resumed meeting to identify grade level benchmarks, which I will share with you this evening. Early implementation via our Link Learning Pathways began last fall. Stakeholder engagement was critical, was essential to the development of the graduate profile, as it is imperative that this profile be of the community, by the community, for the community. This is evident in the composition of the Graduate Profile Committee, while led by the high school redesign team, is comprised of parents, teachers, counselors, site-based administrators, post-secondary, and business partners. Student voice was obtained via focus groups at middle and high schools and via communication with our district's Student Leadership Advisory Council. Throughout the development of the profile, presentations were made at several parent leadership groups, principal meetings, Sacramento Pathways to Success, our K-16 partnership. In addition, each member of the Graduate Profile Committee was charged with seeking feedback between each monthly meeting. The draft profile was shared at a Board of Education meeting in March 2013. And so when asked, when we say college and career ready, what comes to mind? Our stakeholders said, we want critical thinkers who will deeply analyze, not just employees who quickly pick the right answer. We want creative thinkers who will think outside the box and propose solutions to problems that do not yet exist. We want graduates with an entrepreneurial spirit whose energy and enthusiasm will drive the next economy. We want active, engaged citizens who will work together to keep our community healthy and safe for future generations. Our graduate profile began to take shape as the domains emerged. They were bundled and clustered, and tonight I share with you the domains and indicators that comprise our graduate profile. Critical thinking and problem solving. We want graduates, for example, that demonstrate intentional metacognition in decision making. Creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. We want college and career-ready graduates who take the initiative to try new things, who reflect, accept, and grow from setbacks and critical feedback. Communication and collaboration. We want graduates who demonstrate college and career readiness by cooperating and sharing responsibility for collaborative work and by valuing all contributions and evidence. Media evaluation and application. We desire graduates who demonstrate college and career readiness by using digital tools ethically in their personal and professional lives. And finally, life and leadership skills. We want graduates who demonstrate respect for multiple perspectives and actively seek to understand other cultures. Together, these domains and indicators, well vetted and supported by our stakeholders, comprise the draft Sacramento City Unified School District graduate profile I present to you this evening. And as a former elementary and high school principal, I know, our committee knew, and our district knows that it would take more than a graduate profile, which describes a high school senior as he or she is ready to cross the stage, to produce college career-ready graduates. We needed to provide guiding information or benchmarks at critical steps along the way. After much conversation, a decision was made to develop benchmarks at key developmental and grade level milestones. As the Graduate Profile Committee began to develop these grade level benchmarks, we realized the tension inherent in this work, and we made every effort to seek balance between whole child, the needs of the whole child, and discipline-specific material, for example, lessons learned in math, science, history, social science classes. The need to address grade level standards and the global, more all-encompassing, as you just heard, social emotional learning objectives and competencies. The challenge between group work and independent effort. The synergy that results when all contribute, valuing the synergy while also paying attention to each student's individual effort. Process and product. We often measure product. What about the process that produced the product? And finally, for all our stakeholders to own this document, we needed parent, student, community-friendly language, as well as precise academic language that would inform teacher practice and result in rigorous instruction. The Graduate Profile Committee was able to address these tensions and balance our work in developing benchmarks by consistently and continually referring to four major drivers: our Common Core state standards, our recently revised career technical education standards, our social emotional learning competencies, and nationally agreed upon 21st century skills, sometimes referred to as work readiness skills. After months of intense, focused committee work, the Graduate Profile Committee produced a working document you see before you, known as the Proposed Graduate Profile, benchmarked. I'd like to walk you through one portion of the benchmark graduate profile. We begin with the domain, communication and collaboration. The indicator, the expected mark upon graduation, is that student is able to use social and interpersonal skills to establish and maintain positive relationships. We benchmark this skill for the first time in grade 3 with a focus on family and classroom, and we'll measure the student's ability to make friends with classmates. In the 6th grade, we expect that student will be able to describe the competencies or skill sets needed to make and keep friends beyond the classroom and in the community. In 8th grade, we will measure the student's ability to establish positive peer relationships in a variety of settings. 10th grade finds us measuring students' ability to maintain positive relationships with peers and adults at school and in the community. Across the benchmark, 12th grade measures the student's ability to demonstrate competencies at school and in the workplace. This will require strong business partner engagement and a robust, comprehensive continuum of quality work-based learning experiences. The committee feels confident that this benchmark profile will serve to guide student learning preschool through graduation, while simultaneously serving as a key component of an infrastructure to guide needed intervention and support. As with all work connected with the development of our graduate profile, we sought stakeholder engagement throughout the process. One example was the feedback we received from sites involved in early implementation. And tonight, to share their approach, we have John Fleming, lead teacher from Johnson Corporate Business Academy at Hiram Johnson High School, and Matt Turkey, principal of School of Engineering and Sciences. I now invite John Fleming to the podium.
Good evening. It's really my great privilege to be able to share some of the work that we are doing at the Hiram Johnson High School, Johnson Corporate Business Academy. We just simply usually refer to ourselves as JCBA. And there we go. And I do want to share how we're using the graduate profile already in a daily basis or on a daily basis within our academy. As part of the transition to Common Core, our academy needed to create a set of student outcomes. We sat down as a staff and started working on that. At the time we were doing this work, we were kind of fortunate in that the committee, the district, was also working on this thing called the graduate profile. So we used some of the early versions of that to inform our work as we were developing our own student outcomes. The result of that, you can see up on the screen, and this is what we took the graduate profile concepts that we adopted as part of our student outcomes and folded it in with 21st century skills to create a single document that highlighted both. We then organized the student outcomes into categories and we're allowed to personalize it for our academy. And if you notice, the category titles are slightly modified from the graduate profile, and we did that because they spell out the acronym JCBA, which helps our students really connect with this document and take it as part of our academy and what we do on a daily basis. We took this graphic and made it into large posters, and these are displayed in all of the classrooms within our academy so that students and staff can refer to this on a daily basis as we work on our classroom learning, and students can see that this also applies to their future endeavors. The next thing that we did was to develop this rubric with bulleted points that highlighted specific skills that students are expected to master by the time they leave our program as seniors. These are also in alignment with the benchmarks from the graduate profile. The rubric is shared with all the students at the beginning of the school year in a binder that we provide to the students with this and several other documents that we use within our academy. The staff and students reuse this rubric on nearly a daily basis, as students use this to monitor their own progress, and staff uses this to monitor student progress as well as they are working towards proficiency. The student outcomes are now a foundation of our academy, and they inform our curriculum, our instructional planning, and delivery, as well as assessment. Both staff and students use these documents on a regular basis. They use these to reflect on learning, and students use this to project where they need to be so that they can work towards proficiency and then eventually advanced in all the categories. I'm going to pull out one of these for you, the creative and innovative thinking, and you can see how we have delineated from novice through emerging, proficient, and then advanced. We have found that the real power in using the student outcomes and the graduate profile is using them for planning, and they serve as an anchor for the academy, both students and staff, as we keep working to improve the program. We also, and the other real power of this, is using this for regular reflection for both staff and students. We build in at the end of projects, at the end of major assignments, for students to do self-reflection, going back to these elements to see what did they master, what did they do, what was incorporated, and where are they on this. And in staff, of course, we use this regularly to reflect on how are we doing, where do we need to improve, where do we need to tighten up our program. So it's used for both to monitor progress. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. I'd like to reiterate, first of all, the importance of actually building a body of skills as well as just knowledge for college and career readiness for students. I don't think it's enough just to say, okay, students, if you learn all you need to know in math, all you need to know in biology, all you need to know in these different subject areas, you're really ready for college and career. Because we cannot forget these types of skills, which we as adults, and even as students going through, we kind of know viscerally that these things are important. But then, so if these things are important, then why don't we start assessing them? Why don't we start seeing where students are within these skills and then give them some feedback on where they need to go to actually improve within these skills? And that's what we're really starting to do right now. So at SES, we have rubrics which are aligned to each of these skills at the 12th grade level. We do have to map those rubrics backwards so that they can actually fit the 10th grade and then also the 8th grade as well. They start off in a 12th grade level. We get these vetted rubrics either from ConnectEd Studios or from places like the Literacy Design Collaborative, which are pretty good places. And as I say, we track them back for the 10th grade and then for the 8th grade also. One thing which I'd like to say as well, how this kind of lives and breathes over at the School of Engineering and Sciences. If you come and see a class at the School of Engineering and Sciences, you'll see students doing these things throughout the school. Sometimes they're informally, sometimes they're formally. The times where we kind of formally assess these things, some examples, communication within English language arts all the time. With the new Common Core, communication and writing, for example, within science, within engineering, within social studies, that kind of thing. The collaboration within our integrated units, it happens all the time as well. I think Dr. Roberts mentioned earlier the link between the graduate profile and social emotional learning. I like to be really explicit about that. We do social emotional learning at School of Engineering and Sciences as well, and we try and make the links between SEL and the skills for academic and career success, or the graduate portfolio, very, very explicit to students, because they do kind of live within one another and they're very much linked. One of the places which we formally assess our skills for academic and career success, so the graduate portfolio, would be within our integrated units. So the graphic which you see before you, I'll try and see if I can make that understandable. So within each grade level, there are 4 integrated units. So if you look at 7th grade, starting in quarter 1 with Radish Siege, going down quarter 2 biomimicry, quarter 3 science fair, and quarter 4 Mobots. The initials next to each one also mean that, well, within the Radish Siege, then we will also be assessing our 7th grade students on critical thinking. Within biomimicry, we'll also be assessing our students in communication and collaboration. In the science fair, we'll be looking at media evaluation, and in Mobots, we'll be looking at creativity. So it ensures that 4 times a year, we're formally assessing these things, as well as the assessment which happens outside of the integrated units. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. And now back to our timeline. This has been a lengthy, thoughtful process that engaged our many stakeholders and provided us time to include all voices. The committee is now ready to address next steps. We plan to return, I need to go back one. Before we address next steps in closing, that this has truly been an opportunity working together, all of us members of the graduate profile, putting children first. On behalf of the many members, the names you see before you, I thank you for the opportunity to be involved in this effort. I messed up, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
I messed up the order. I apologize. For our next steps, we plan to return to the board to seek board approval for our graduate profile. Once you do approve or ask us to continue working on this, we would like to develop metrics for our benchmarks. We then would like to integrate the indicators within our professional learning opportunities as we engage in vertical grade level articulation. And then, as always, every step along this way, we continue to seek stakeholder engagement as we continue the development of the graduate profile and move into day in, day out classroom implementation.
Just one final comment. I just wanted to just share with you the evolution of this. It has taken us 4 years, and when I started by saying we are proud parents, this is something that we actually began with a blank slate, and we have nurtured to this point. And most districts do have a graduate profile, but very few have taken the time to actually back map and create grade level benchmarks. And for that, we are a trailblazer in the state where districts are calling on us, asking for copies of how we are doing this and how the profile is being implemented in our schools. And so I just wanted to say before the board and before the superintendent to acknowledge Teresa McEwen and the team for their leadership and steadfast dedication. They have worked with over 2,000 stakeholders in engaging them in this process. So just wanted to just bring that to the board's attention, and now we will entertain questions. Thank you.
And do we have public comment?
We have 2 comments on this item from Terrence Gladney and Jennifer Lutzenberger Phillips.
Me again, Terrence Gladney. I do want to thank staff for all the hard work. I know that they have done, engagement. We had a representative last year from our board that was, part of the planning process. I just wanted to share some observations and personal observations. I think that, we highlight college and career, but when I think about what I want my son to be when he leaves school and kind of enters the world, I think that we're highlighting SEL and all these other initiatives. And I don't think that it should be necessarily wrapped under this. It should be spelled out. So maybe we could say college, career, and life ready. I think that we should really spell out that we're teaching more than just, to go to college or get a job. We're talking about entrepreneurism and everything else. I saw in the graduate profile there were a lot of cultural related benchmarks. I would like to see what do we have across our district that prepares those students for that. I went to school at Berkeley High, and it was the first district in the country that had an African American Studies department. Right now in LA Unified, they have ethnic studies as a requirement for graduation. I would like to see how many of our high schools are offering curriculum targeted at those schools that we know are of the highest need so that they can see something that reflects them in the curriculum. I mean, we have, these small high schools for the students who we say don't fit in the comprehensive ones, but the ones that define the achievement gap, as Superintendent Bonda said at his opening press conference, are kids of color. So we need to make sure that the curriculum reflects them so they can have some ownership in what they're learning. So I would like to see how many of our high schools are offering either ethnic studies, African American studies, whether it's African American literature, African American history, Chicano Latino studies. What does that look like so that we can truly say that they're culturally responsive and aware? As part of my participation with the whole SEL initiative, I saw college and career readiness being implemented in Nashville in a different manner in that they weren't defining it at the ground level. They actually surveyed their environment and said, what industry partners do we have? Like, where will our students end up employed? So for us, it will probably be government or education. So if we're using Nashville as an example, they will go out, and what they did in Nashville, they went out to Warner Nashville and all of the partners that they have there and let them sort of shape the curriculum. And they built a partnership and a bridge between those industry companies, and they're present in the schools. They have a high school that has a credit union where kids can open bank accounts, they can work, and then they can actually be career ready. So I'd like us to take this probably a step further, and I know it's not necessarily part of the graduate profile, but it's something for us to think about as far as next steps as well. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Lutzenberger Phillips, and I'm the Director of Learning, Teaching, and Pathway Development for Connect Ed, a partner organization that supports linked learning pathways in districts. I'm here to offer my support for the Sacramento City Graduate Profile and to share my hope that you will approve it. My organization supports linked learning throughout California and the nation, including those districts who've recently joined linked learning through AB 790 and the California Career Pathways Trust grants. At Connect Ed, we have found the work that's been undertaken by your district, by your staff, by your community stakeholders to draft, benchmark, and begin to pilot this graduate profile to be a true inspiration, as Dr. Roberts was attesting earlier. Many districts new to linked learning are hoping to define their expectations for college and career readiness, and we believe that they could learn so much from the example that you are creating here. Board approval would be a crucial step to move this exemplary process forward, one we believe will serve as a model for districts throughout the state and nation. Thank you so much for your leadership and for your consideration.
Thank you. And that concludes public comments. Do I have any comments or questions from my colleagues? Thank you, Dr. Roberts, and we look forward to seeing you at the next board meeting. Thank you. Bringing us then to item 10.4, Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Engagement Committee update. Mr. Ross.
Good evening. Superintendent Bonda, President Wu, members of the board. I'm here tonight to come back to the board with some revisions to our recommendations regarding the engagement strategy and plan, the local control and accountability plan. Specifically, We're going to talk tonight about the Parent Engagement Committee and the creation and the creation of that committee that we talked a little bit about at our last update. I might add that Tumua was scheduled to be here presenting with me tonight, but she's called away on a personal matter, so you just get me. So as background, as you remember, at the October 16th board meeting, we laid out the strategy and plan for this year and the multiple tiers of engagement that we plan on using throughout the year in different facets of the LCAP plan. But what we heard, loud and clear, I think, with feedback from the community, from speakers, from the board, was really questions about the LCAP advisory committee and how to, what does it look like? How do we create it? And really, the feedback all focused on how do we create a democratic process for making sure that group is representative of the communities that we serve. I quote here in the slide some of the language from LCFF that calls for the inclusion of parents, including parents or legal guardians of targeted disadvantaged pupils in the planning and implementation of the LCFF, including the creation of a specific parent advisory committee. And so while there are obviously different interpretations of what that means exactly, I think we are all moving the same direction, which is we want a smaller group to really roll their sleeves up and dive into the kind of deep detailed work of this of the LCAP and its implementation in Sacramento. So just a reminder, we're talking tonight just about the LCAP advisory committee piece. We're still moving forward with community meetings, engagement at school site level, and the PEV process, the community planning process later in the cycle. I didn't want to neglect those pieces because they're a big part of the equation with regards to engagement around the LCAP. But tonight the focus is on the LCAP advisory committee. So what you've seen in your board packet and what we're proposing, what we're recommending to the board to move forward with is a different model than what we proposed on October 16th. This model is based on, but not identical to, models used in Oakland and LAUSD, and modeled in part after similar board committees, such as the 7-Eleven committee. In this model, we're recommending that each board member and the superintendent would make 2 appointees to this committee. Obviously, the notion is that with a desire to have this group be representative democratically of the communities that we serve and all of our constituents, having our democratically elected school board members make the appointments seemed like a natural fit and a good way to accomplish that in a way that was both fair and equitable. The board, as we've laid it out, would make their appointments based on applications. We'll do an application process, and you can see in the executive summary that's laid out extensively. We'll promote it at schools through every mechanism at our disposal, and we'll ask some key questions to make sure that the representation in this group is demographically representative of both the community we serve as well as specifically the LCFF subgroups that the law specifically calls out for. So what are those demographics and what does that break down? We're recommending that the group, again, 16 members, contain at least 10 parents and at least 10 students. We want to make sure that the group, number one, is a majority a parent voice, because that is explicitly called out in the LCFF. And as we've talked about throughout the process, and we worked hard last year to ensure that student voice is such a critical piece of this, we need to make sure that that student voice is represented on this group as well. And this is an area, I think, that sets our plan apart from that of Oakland and LAUSD, in that we're recommending that the specific makeup of the group be broken down consistent with the district's demographic breakdown. So, for example, we're approximately 71% free and reduced lunch, which is where you see that number 11 for 11 representatives from Title I schools. We're approximately 22% English learners in our district, and thus the 3 English learner representatives, or at least 3 English learner representatives, I should say, and so on and so forth. Naturally, we assume board members will select or appoint members from their trustee areas, although that's certainly at the board's discretion if that's something that you wanted to make a requirement of this process. So the scope and role of this group. We're focusing on three primary directives. Number one, to synthesize stakeholder input from our other processes. One of the challenges I think we saw last year in the first year of LCAP implementation was that we had so much feedback and so much input from stakeholders through our various mechanisms. It gets tough to synthesize that and focus it in a way that's productive and helpful for the process. So that'd be an area where this group could help us and make sure that we are leveraging that community voice in every step along the way. We'd ask them to work with staff to review the annual progress towards stated metrics, the annual review portion of the LCAP, which is a required part of the law, but is an important step before we get to the next year's LCAP, because first we have to look at did we live up to the promises and commitments that we said we were going to last year. And then to provide written input and feedback on the draft district goals, metrics, actions, services, and expenditures, essentially the entire LCAP, and consult with this group throughout the process, because ultimately the goal of this group and this entire LCAP engagement strategy is to make sure that the board can make informed decisions and has a sense of the community's voice in this process when the board makes their final decision regarding the LCAP in June. The timeline and next steps. Once we get direction from the board tonight, we would open the application window, and you can see in the executive summary that's in the board packet, we go into some detail around specific questions and demographic information that we would be asking for applicants. We would have the application window beginning as early as Monday and going through December 12th. These are tentative dates. By the way, the nuts and bolts of it may require a day here or there on either side, but with the goal of bringing back a list of applicants to the board at the December 18th meeting so that the board can select membership and get this group to begin meeting after the holidays. So that's a quick presentation, but because of the late hour, I figured I'd try and make it kind of snappy. I'm sure we'll have questions and comments from both the public and the board.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have public comment?
Yes, we have 8 public comments on this item, and the first 3 commentators are Jonathan Tran, Howard Lawrence, and Terrence Gladney.
Evenings, members of the board, President Wu, Superintendent Banda. Earlier this afternoon, Hmong Innovating Politics submitted comments to you in regards to recommendations that we'd like to see. Oh, I'm sorry, introduce myself, Jonathan Tran with Hmong Innovating Politics. We just had a handful of recommendations. Actually, we're very encouraged by the prospect of creating a parent advisory committee. I think it's an important step from the challenges that we faced last year. So I'm going to do a quick summary in terms of some of the recommendations that we believe will help the district better engage parents and families moving forward. So first of all, is I believe that there's a desire to expand the committee membership to include parent advocates and trusted community liaisons. As it currently states within the proposal, the advisory committee itself is limited to only parents or former parents or parents with kids that used to be in the district or staff. This doesn't include community liaisons or individuals with skill sets and trusted relationships that work within the community itself. In LAUSD, what they did was they created a separate community advisory committee to go along with their parent advisory committee. We don't know if that's the process that Sac City Unified wants to go in, which is fine, but at the very least, we want to be able to include some community voices in the process. The second piece is to also place a cap on the number of district staff in the committee. with due respect to staff, I think they have tremendous assets and are very important to the discussion around LCFF. However, we believe that in order to maintain and sustain the independence and authenticity of Parent Advisory Committee, to place a cap of 2 district staff as a way to inform and instruct the committee, as opposed to having overall government-making decision within the process itself. The last 2 pieces are to establish a rubric and also move beyond the idea of simple inclusion. Let's partner with community-based organizations to really attract individuals that can reach out to underserved communities that have historically not been active in both the 7-Eleven committee or other processes within the district itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, President Wu, members of the board. My name is Howard Lawrence, and I'm a representative of Sacramento Area Congregations Together. And I'm here tonight to talk about the recommendation that's been presented to you, and would like to say that we really appreciate the staff's response to our request to recreate a more democratic and reflective process for our local accountability plan advisory committee. We think that what has been proposed is better and more detailed than what we were previously presented. However, we would also like to state that we see this as more of a journey, that eventually we would like to create a structure where we actually have true democratic selection and election. We simply don't have time to put that sort of structure in place and be able to kick in for this year. So we see this more as a journey than the final destination. We also, in looking at the details, see that some of the parents selected may actually be employed by the district or receive money from the district on a contract basis, and we think that's fine. But we ought to measure and make sure that there is perhaps a cap on that. Now, our recommendation would be to look at, say, a maximum of 5, so that we don't get, too many people who are actually working for the district that are serving in this capacity. We also think that it might be beneficial for this group, in addition to their advisory function on the whole LCAP process, to perhaps be a focus group for the superintendent to meet with once a year and just get a feedback loop going that otherwise wouldn't exist. And then finally, on the issue of students, I think having the idea of students be part of the process is not only required, by law, but it's a great process. But I don't think too many students like to sit with a bunch of old people like us sitting around discussing policy. So maybe we ought to talk about creating a student advisory committee to review LCAP as a separate issue.
Thank you. Mr. Gladney.
Terrence Gladney. The theme for this year's Parent Teacher Home Visit Project National Conference was meeting in the middle. And what that meant was, historically or over the most recent years, a lot of the locations for those conferences have been, towards the west. So San Francisco, Denver, they've been this way. So what they did was meet in the middle in St. Paul. And what that meant was that the people on the East Coast and Boston and D.C. didn't necessarily have to traverse the whole country, but we could meet technically in the middle. And I think that it was misinterpreted, when the community came forward and said a more democratic process. What I heard was they want people to be elected. Where we end up will probably be somewhere in the middle if we're, collaborative and we just focus on what the end game is, which is the children. So perhaps we could have some combination of elections which will retain some local control with the school sites. And I say school sites, not trustee areas, because my daughter goes to school at a school that is in physically Area 1, but I live in Area 6. San Brandon, which sits right behind it, and that's not our doing, obviously. At some point, policy and politics determine that you guys want to split the attendance, or maybe it's the closures of Bernie or whatever. But San Brandon, I deliver cookie dough to people who live all the way on the edge of Pocket, which is Board Member Wu's area. but the school sits in Board Member Hanson's area. So I say school sites because I think that best determines local control. So maybe we could have some combination of those school sites selecting people to represent them, but still empower you guys as our elected representatives to fill those gaps, because we may not get the best candidates necessarily from the school sites if we're, if we only focus on, area 1 schools or whatever. So I think that if there is an appointment process involved in whatever capacity, I would like to see something that can ensure that there is consistency. So in the application, I would like to figure out how much we're going to value, whether a person is a family or a parent member, whether or not they serve just at a local school site or in a district-wide capacity, and other things that can contribute to make sure that they're truly reflective of what the intent of the law is. So, whether they're representing a Title I student or a foster youth or whatever. So I would like this discussion, obviously, to continue, and I know this is a first draft, but I would like us to hopefully meet somewhere in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gladden.
The next 3 speakers are Carl Pinkston, Laura Rios, and Frank DeYoung.
Good evening. My name is Carl Pinkston. I'm representing Black Parallel School Board and the Community Priority Coalition. Good evening, President Wu and Superintendent Banta. Tonight I wanted to speak to you in terms of what the challenges of this law, but most importantly, what the challenges of the community expect. The community was hoping that this particular law would give empowerment to parents and to students, which means that they get to select who they want to represent them and who will participate in their behalf as a representative part of the process. So that's the piece that I think that's at the essence and the core of what really parents, students, and community would like to see. Your challenge is that may not be enough time, but I think I ask you to pause for a moment today before moving forward. The second piece, there needs to be a distinction between a working advisory committee and a parent-student English language learner advisory committee. A working advisory committee will be a smaller body that does the work that needs to be done to assist to get the information to you. That process needs to be, you need to have some much more thought taken into it and how it's going to be representative. And that I would strongly recommend that it would be selected by the parents, community, and students to serve on that much smaller committee. But also take the time going forward to think through how this democratic process will be set up, 1. 2, who would be a part of it. 3, what's the relationship to the board and to staff. And 5, allowing that all voices are heard and be seen going all the way through to the actual plan. Because one of the challenges was last year was your plan was predetermined by the budget. We would like to see that the parents, student, and community determine what goes in the plan and then let the budget figure out a way to make that plan work. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Rios, and I'm a parent at West Campus and Earl Warren. I'm here because I agree totally with Howard and Carl about having an elected by parents committee. That's my buzzword. When I heard selected or appointed, I was kind of like, no, I don't think that's going to work for the parents because the LCFF law did not call out for that. So I agree with them. Also, I just want to let you know that I just came right now from California Endowment Office. West Ed hosted a question and answer about the Rubik system and how they're going to measure success for the kids in the parent engagement process. And I just felt really hope as to say, yes, I think Sac City could really move forward and really we could be the example of parent engagement and how we're going to engage our parents on this process in LCFF. Because Fresno was there, LA was there, Oakland was there, and they share the same commonalities about how parents are not really authentically engaged in the process. So I think we, Sac City, we could do that. I think we could. And then with that, before, I know you said it was a process of doing an application process. Before we do that, I would like to have parents more have the tools and know what LCFF is about and LCAP, because there's some parents out there that still don't know what it is. Let them know more, engage them more, give them more tools so that when it comes to time for the election or selection, whatever you guys decide, at least they know what they're getting themselves into. I do want to share a flyer. I don't know if I put it on here, it will show, but we're doing a local control in action coming up December 3rd because I am so invested in parent advocacy. I'm not getting paid for this. This is all voluntary. Because I care for the parents. I care that parents really, really feel that they're valued. Their voices are valued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Wu, Superintendent Banda, and board. My name is Frank DeYoung. I represent Hollywood Park. I'm here to speak on this, and you know, I've thought about this a long time. I thought about elections. I thought about different ways to do this. I don't really have a problem with the proposal as it's laid out right now. I think this is a growing process. I mean, it's going to be a learning process. We have to move. We have to start doing something. I'd like to think that this is the first step, and we can look at it and say later, do we really need to look at elections in some process? What I really don't want this to become is a political process. I want it to be something where parents are working on this for what's in the best interest of the kids. That's what we really should be about. I'd like to make sure, to a certain extent, that board members, in my own personal opinion, should only be allowed to nominate people within that reside in their own districts. That way they make sure their districts are represented. And so hopefully the application process does not turn out to be as intimidating as the 7-Eleven committee is, which basically means if you don't know everything about everything, don't bother putting your application in, so that normal people just don't get scared away and you don't have a whole bunch of people putting in their applications. And I also want to make sure this process is open to the public and these meetings are open, because to be honest, some things like the 7-Eleven committee, I think I got invited to one. Otherwise, I didn't know they were going on. And this committee needs to function in an open environment where parents can come to the meeting and watch and see what's going on and hear the discussions. I personally believe that I voted for my representative on this board and they represent me. And so that means that I have to trust that they're going to do what's best for my district. And so I don't have as much of an issue as some may have with board members appointing them, because basically if I have an issue with that when they come up for election, I won't vote for them. So that's really all I have to say on this, and thank you for your time this evening.
Our final two speakers are Liz Guillen and Angie Sutherland.
Good evening, President Wu and new Superintendent Banda. Look forward to meeting you and the rest of the board members. I'm Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. Public Advocates is a nonprofit civil rights law firm. We're based in San Francisco, but I'm based here in Sacramento, and we do education, policy, and legal advocacy as well. And we were very involved in the development and the enactment and now the implementation of the local control funding formula. And we're very proud of it and consider it to be our law. And we work very hard to help parents and students and community members understand it so that they can also know that it's their law. One of the important principles underlying it is that districts would get more flexibility in the use of funds, and thus the elimination of the 80-some categorical programs. But in exchange for that, there would be much more robust community engagement and local control. And that local would be expanded to include communities in decision-making. And for that reason, there is in law a requirement for 2 parent committees to review and comment. Those 2 parent committees are the District Advisory Committee, and the English Learner Parent Advisory Committee. And the statute says that if you have those two, you don't have to form them if they meet the requirements. You don't have to make new ones. In addition, the law contemplated, as was earlier requested and hoped for, that the budget be adopted at the same time as the plan so that they would work together and not the budget driving these decisions. A point I want to make that I think is really important is that it's not super clear, not super clear that this committee is attempting to meet the minimum requirements. It appears to be going beyond that, which is good. On the other hand, it would be a shame if this committee were to replace the important role that the Parent Advisory Committee and the English Learner Advisory Committee at the district level is supposed to play in the review and comment and in receiving comments back from the superintendent under the statute. So separating those two, I think, is important just for transparency purposes. The other point I'd like to make is that the reason a recommendation for a separate student group is something we agree with has to do with the final regulations that were adopted by State Board last Friday. And that is that student consultation is a process now that's much more than what may have been in the past. The intent was to make that stronger, and there were examples given in the regulations, such as forums, student advisory committees. So because they're important, we recommend that they would not be part of a larger engagement group that could swallow them up. And lastly, the difference between this proposal and the Oakland proposal is that the Oakland Unified School District's process contemplated electing parents who participated in school site councils so that their representation was definitely one of a selection by parents for parents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angie Sutherland, and I just want to thank the district for the creation of, or for creating the LCAP Advisory Committee. It's been a lot of good progress since last year with everything the way it was handled, and now we're moving forward in a good direction, I think. I wanted to comment on the application process as outlined in the presentation tonight, as well as committee selection and the committee demographic. It says in there that people would apply online, and I think that that could be an issue. A lot of people in our committee don't even have access to the ability to do that. As far as the committee selection, I heard a lot of overlapping comments tonight that I agree with. I would like an alternative to the selection process by the trustees and recommend consulting with parents and parent groups and other community groups to find a more democratic process that's transparent and that will actually ensure the diversity needed for the committee. I'm not sure that the school site councils meet that requirement, or having trustees select people that reside in their areas would meet that requirement. So I think more discussion needs to happen on that. As far as the demographics, I agree with the capping of the staff on the committee. I was thinking they could be more as like participants on subcommittees versus being on the parent advisory committee. It could be a conflict of interest for them, almost like they're advising themselves if they're advising the district. Those were my 3 areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Thank you. Questions from my colleagues or comments? Member Arroyo.
Thank you, President Wu. Thank you, Ms. Guillen, for coming up and making those comments, because I had written on my own set of comments, having worked in the legislature when this was being proposed by the governor, and how, as a staffer to and a member on education, I had to basically brief her on what the takeaways were from this new model. Districts would get more money, districts would get more flexibility on how to use the money, but in exchange, they needed to be more encompassing and more genuine and broader ways to engage parents in being part of the process. So from the onset, as far as I sit here as a board member, I understood not only what the letter of the law is, but also what the intent of the law is. And I would make a commitment that I will work very hard to make sure that that second part of ensuring that parents have a genuine, more direct role in the process of decision making. How we get there, I mean, we can talk about it, but it is not a recommendation. It was not a recommendation. It was not a if you can. It was a there has to be greater parent engagement. So for me, in my mind, there is a greater distinction about what is expected from school districts in terms of the LCAP and involving parents. So that's the first step and the first thing that I need to be clear with in terms of this implementation of the LCAP. In order to get there, I think that there are two very specific items that will definitely help me, and I think will help not only the staff in the district, but also the community. And I think it's making sure that we are very transparent as to how we, as a district and as a board, move forward, in that when we make a step, I think that we need to, number one, be very clear in explaining what that step is and why we're making that step. I think many times as district, as a board, we take a lot of actions. Hopefully the board understanding why we're doing them, but we don't take the time to explain it to the public. And there's a lot of angst, or there are a lot of blank spots within people's understanding as to why we're acting. We're clear in our heads, but not necessarily within the public. And I think that we will have to be very thorough in being transparent and communicating what we're doing. And the second thing I think that we really need to be very thorough is we need to explain definitions. We need to be very clear on how we define parent engagement, for example, or how we define the standards that we're going to be operating. For example, there's a discussion, I'm getting emails, I'm getting calls, we're dialogue as far as what really meets the committee, right? What's with or what's not within the bounds of the law. Defining what is expected of this advisory committee. And I think that some ideas are presented here, but as we move forward, we need to be very clear on what we mean by what we are entrusting this committee to do, so that there is no misunderstanding, and the district and the community understands what we're expecting of this group, and we have different definitions of what engagement or how much their input should weigh or not, right? And so we need to be very much in the same page in understanding these points. How the specific process, I think that there's a million ways to skin a cat. So I think that we can work on those. But I'm very, very strong of the opinion that we need to follow the intent of the law, that parents need to be way more involved in the process, in the selection process, and that we need to have transparency in a way that probably we haven't had before, and it has been very good, I think, over the last couple of years. And then define what the expectations and what the terms of what we're dealing with, so that we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Arroyo. If I can just add, I think one of our commenters, I believe Mr. Lawrence, referred to this process as a journey, and I think that's been a constant theme that we've been using throughout since the beginning of LCAP, the LCAP implementation plan last year, and it remains true. I think that I do think that last year we had our hiccups in our first year, but I think that it took engagement to a new level. And the goal is to continue to take this process to a new level so that we are meeting both the letter of the law and the intent of LCFF. So I share, I think we all share your comments and the comments of the crowd. And I think that when you hear the public comments, some of them, obviously, there's consistencies, but there's also different suggestions about ways, what would and would not work with regards to the creation of the committee. I'm not sure that there is a quote-unquote perfect way right now. I understand the desire to have a kind of quote-unquote democratically elected group. I think the reason that we're not proposing that here is I'm not sure that we have the infrastructure mechanics in place to do that in a way that really is equitable and creates a group that can truly represent all of our communities, which is why the suggestion of having our trustees play that role, at least for this year, which is why we came up with that notion. But I share all of your sentiments.
Yeah, and thank you. I really appreciate that. And again, it's less about the specific process as much as being very thorough in explaining our process with our stakeholders. Thank you.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Wu. Again, thank you. Do you watch the show The Voice? No.
I'm sorry.
It's there's a particular participant on there where the judges are like, yeah, you're developing right in front of our eyes, and I think about that with you. You are definitely developing and coming into your own standing with this project. So I do want to commend you on that. You've done a lot of heavy lifting, and you've come a long way from where we were about a year ago or so, was it? Seemed like it was just yesterday. So, but this is not going to be perfect, and we knew that. You knew that coming into this meeting. But we do want to find ways of how we're going to engage more parents in the process. I do read clearly in here your words of, the intent of this group is not to override or usurp the authority of individual school communities or committees. So you do, that was not the intent to remove any other group. And I truly believe that. I mean, you have it in writing. So I hear the feedback from our participants in the meeting today, and it pleases me that we have more and more every time we get to these meetings, right? Doesn't it please you? It shows the engagement. Unfortunately, because and I really think Mr. Tran's comments are valid. I appreciate that he took the time to send us his feedback. I understand the timeline that we're pushed against because you want to start this at the beginning of the year. What day is it that you're trying to start this up in January? Because I can't recall. I didn't bring my.
Well, I mean, I don't think that we had a specific day. I mean, naturally, once the group is formed, we coordinate schedules and make sure that it works for everybody. I think the notion was we want to be able to hit the ground running after the first of the year. Shortly thereafter, the governor will release his first budget, and we want to make sure that this group is prepared to really sort of dive in early in that process and have some time before that to learn, to do some professional learning together and sort of come together as a group. So the timeline was set up, and it's admittedly an aggressive timeline, but I think there's urgency to get the work moving, but we'll take as long as we need to put the group together.
Mm-hmm. And I really think that, certainly, I think there's a responsibility on board members if we get to select the two individuals to be the representatives on here. I'd like to see that there's the accountability for board members to actually work with those two individuals on things like outreach and engagement of the entire community that they represent. So that way, I mean, in terms of me, I'm looking toward, maybe one of these individuals might want to take my place here at the board, and this would be a wonderful opportunity for them to get out, know the community, know how, to engage the community and do the outreach. So I think there's a win in that respect.
but also there's the win in getting the engagement and helping the Gabe Rosses of the world multiply out throughout our district. So that way it's just not you trying to be at a million places at the same time. We have surrogates out there in all of these areas. So I think it's worth the investment for us. But it's how do we tweak this to get it to the right combination. I don't think I'm prepared today to say, give you a specific direction or to say, yes, let's go with that application. But I am committed to talking to everyone that came forward today, and committed to wanting to come back as a special board meeting, maybe if we want to get this application out before the winter break. I would be committed to doing something like that, because I think that everyone here that came forward has some valid points, and I want to incorporate them all in here. But I think that, as Mr. Gladney said, we need to meet at the middle of the road right now. Let the board members trust in us and let us appoint representatives, and then let you and this committee try to establish the engagement and the outreach so that we can have that more democratically elected representation.
If I can make a suggestion, I think part of the urgency comes from, we presented a month ago and heard feedback loud and clear and wanted to, as we've tried to do throughout this process, continue to evolve our plan to meet what we're hearing from stakeholders. But that's where some of the urgency comes, that quickly, we're about to lose 3 weeks in the calendar within the next 3 of the next 6 weeks we're going to lose because of holidays. So, my suggestion would be, I think, a special board meeting to talk about this is a great idea. I guess my question for the board and maybe looking for direction is I'm not is do we want to hold the process up at this point, or do we want to move forward with the recommendation outlined or a modified version of such, and then continue to have a work group or a special board meeting to look at how it's working? My recommendation is that this be a 1 year. This is a 1 year model. I'm not suggesting that we set up a standing committee at this point. Just like we're, I think, light years ahead of where we were at this time last year, I expect we'll be light years ahead at this time next year. But I think that the danger is always for the expression for perfect to be the enemy of good, and I don't want to, in the attempt to try and make this perfect process, if we don't start that meeting, that group, until mid-February, I don't think that group's going to have the voice they need to have in the process and to really authentically impact the budget. So certainly at the will of the board with regards to what direction you want to go, but just my thoughts.
I would, like I said, I'm committed to talking to our public, maybe even sending you a synthesized form of, here's what I would recommend, and then bringing it back for the next board meeting or special board meeting for action. I'm looking for action, and I'm looking for action fairly quick, because I think we got some good feedback today.
A couple of quick questions. One of them is there are at least a trustee area that does not have a sworn-in trustee. Would the member-elect be allowed to select something?
They would by December 18th. But I'm suggesting the appointment would take place on December 18th. We would have a full complement of the board by December 18th. On December 18th.
So okay.
Yeah.
So they would be.
They'll be seated by then.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was question number one, and then number two. So if we move forward with this, what are the areas that could be tweaked, or what are? I'm just kind of trying to get an idea.
Absolutely.
So if we're moving forward, what's it look like?
Sure. I'm sorry. I apologize for interrupting. I think certainly all this is at our discretion. I think some of the comments from speakers and some of the comments provided by Mr. Tran are great ones. I think it was not intentional to exclude the language he used, the parent advocates or community partners. I think that makes perfect sense. We want to make sure we're inclusive and remind folks again that this is just one aspect of the engagement process. We do have those larger community meetings too, and the community planning process. So there remains multiple entry points into this work and to have a voice, because we know that this is still going to be 16 people out of a much, much larger community. So again, part of the work, not all of it, but I think that's really good feedback. I think that capping staff makes sense, and I'm not sure what the magic number is. I heard both 2 and 5 from members in the public, and I don't know what the magic number is, but I think that is absolutely reasonable step to make sure that it's truly driven by parent voice. I think the piece around creating a rubric for selection, I think that's a really important conversation. I felt it a bit presumptuous for me to make that decision for the board. I mean, I think ultimately what the vision is that if board members are making the appointments, that board members would have those discussions with their communities, and as you all strive to do all the time, be transparent in why you made those decisions. But if that's something that you wanted to create across the board, that's something we can look at and we can certainly help with. But I didn't want to be presumptuous with regards to that.
So my closing comments are, I commend you for the work that you've done. We are leaps and bounds ahead of where we were before in our history in parent engagement, and the superintendent and staff have my full trust and support in moving forward with a version of this. If it gets tweaked, I think, to accommodate some of the comments, but I mean, I will be happy to support your work, and if there's a subcommittee of members that meet kind of to help lead the work or participate, I will be happy to volunteer and participate any way possible to make sure that we are on a timely fashion moving this forward. I concur with you. I think the more time we give parents as a committee to bond, to work together, to learn, to develop their understanding of this, they will be that much more effective. Thank you.
I just want to make one comment about the new board members coming on. There's nothing precluding us as board members or the superintendent or you to reach out to them, to talk to them. I remember when I first got elected in 2008, I got a phone call. I'm not sure if it was from Jerry or if it was from somebody else that was in the legal field, but they explained to me that I was, even though I wasn't officially sworn in, that I still had to abide by the Brown Act and keep things, straight. So, you're kind of like this pseudo kind of, board member, but there's nothing precluding any one of us or staff or the superintendent from talking to them about this. This is an important topic, so I encourage you to reach out.
Yeah, we'll certainly be doing that, and we don't want to put our new board members in a position where they have to be up on the dais on their first day on the job and making a tough decision without any kind of feedback or background information. So yeah, we'll certainly be having those conversations. Yeah,
I think when we came on in 2008,
I can't speak to what happened in 2008, but that's not our intent.
We were in the middle of school closures.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I apologize for having stepped out, but I'm kind of curious on your committee demographics of the ratio between your proposed Title I reps versus English language learners versus special need representatives and foster youth. Is there a particular formula that came up with that idea?
There is. What we strive to do is make it as close to the district demographics as possible. So we're approximately 71% free and reduced lunch. 11 of 16 is roughly 71%. Not exactly. I'm sure one of my math teacher friends can give me the better, a more accurate number, but and so on and so forth. Foster youth is tougher, of course, because there's about 250 or so foster youth in our district, but it's obviously critical both in the law and both the letter and the intent of the law that voice be a part of the table. So.
And so I noticed that this is the Parent Engagement Committee, and I was intrigued by Ms. Guion's comment regarding the input from the ELL committee and the DAC, and possibly as part of the process, a student-led group. I don't know that we have reached out to or informed the ELL committee and the DAC that they have a responsibility under the LCAP, if Ms. Guion's articulation is correct, and that they are part of that process as one of the committees to be providing input into the LCAP?
So, there's a long answer to that. So we engaged with both the DAC and the DLAC last year in this process. If you recall, it was part of the equation. I think the goal for this group is for this group to become that parent engagement committee as laid out in LCFF.
Yeah, but that's not what I heard Ms. Guion say. The law requires, and the law. What if I heard her correctly? The law contemplated 3 separate committees.
The law requires two committees: a parent engagement committee and an EL committee. And Liz certainly is more of an expert than I am. Yes. Yes, exactly. Okay. So those are the two, and so the intent of the parent advisory group is this LCAP advisory committee is to create that parent advisory group in a way that's reflective of all of our district demographics, district communities, specifically the LCFF subgroups. We're in a way double dipping of the EL population because we're including the EL voice in this group, but we do still have the DLAC, which would serve as the English learner advisory group. But the value of having a holistic group come together with all the voices in the same room is you get a group, albeit a small one, but a group that's representative of all the voices in our district at one table at the same time. I think I've said ad nauseum through this process that our engagement strategy is about and, not or. We have students in this group. It doesn't mean we're not going to continue to engage with the Student Advisory Council. We have throughout this process. In fact, we were lauded by folks in this world for our student engagement activities last year, and we had a tremendous amount of student voice. So, as an example, it's part of the process, but we anticipate this group being that parent engagement group, the parent advisory group. Excuse me.
And we're talking about open processes. We're talking about engagement of all our stakeholders. And so I'm contemplating that these committees will be meeting not to the exclusivity of the remainder of our stakeholders. So I'm hoping that this district will assist the committee in reaching out to the remainder of our district stakeholders so that all can participate and provide input into what they will be providing to us as input.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we gleaned from the Oakland model was that they had the meetings were the meetings of their advisory group were held in public, and that's I think the vision for this group as well.
Vice President Pritchard.
Thank you. Great job on listening to the community and us and articulating it all in this document. I do have a quick question, just clarification on the committee demographics. The breakdown has 17.
Yes.
Is
in
it
fact,
16?
Lisa Allen pointed that out to me the other day. So the goal is, we know that when you look at Title I representatives, English learners, there's going to be some overlap. And what we're trying to do is, ultimately, as you all know from going through the 711 process, it's a crude term, but there's some horse trading that goes on at the board level to make sure that we have people representing all the different groups. And so I think that's just going to, we wanted to make sure the group was represented. It was representative of the district demographics, but understanding that there are going to be people that represent multiple groups, and we can navigate through that piece as we get to it. Yeah.
And thank you, Mr. Ross.
You bet.
Look forward to you coming back.
So just, can I get clarity? I apologize, President Wu. I know that Member Rodriguez had mentioned a special meeting. I want to be sure that I'm clear. Are we, do we have the direction to move forward with this for now and then continue to have discussions with the board about ways to evolve and grow it as we go? Or is there a desire to hold off until we have a further discussion?
Before I answer that, I think Superintendent Bonda would like to make.
Well, just quick add-ons. And first of all, Gabe, you did a great job of really putting this together in a real, you simplified it, but still it was there. Everybody could see that. And I want to thank all the folks, all the parents and the community members that came out to speak. I mean, that's one of the things that I really noticed before I came to Sacramento is that there was a lot of community involvement, community engagement, or at least a lot of efforts being made to reach out to this community. And I'm so glad to see folks here being able to speak their voice and, their mind and being able to, again, weigh in on a process that we're trying to make transparent and open and engaging so that we have good representation on that committee that helps guide this work. It is relatively new. I know we're kind of building it as we go forward, but this is really an attempt on our part to really address that one part of that is you create this central group that is the LCAP advisory group. But then that doesn't mean we're not still collecting and getting data and input from all the other groups that are out there, community and parent groups that are out there that also want to weigh in on, because obviously we're not going to be able to seat everybody on this committee, but we definitely want a good representation on there. So thank you for that.
So before I answer your question, what again were you suggesting that we do on the 18th? Select committee members?
Correct. So what the recommendation that we had outlined in the plan was that we begin soliciting applications now. I think a couple members of the public correctly noted that our capacity to do a democratic election is limited in order to do it in a comprehensive way in a reasonable time frame. So I guess I'm asking, do we have the board's blessing to move forward with the application process? Certainly it's the board's discretion. If you don't feel ready to make appointments by December 18th, you don't have to do so. But if we can begin the application process so we can hit the ground running and get that ball rolling, I think that would at least give us the ability to start gathering names. And I would encourage, I'm sure you'll be doing this anyway, but I would encourage certainly all board members to reach out to people in your community who you think may want to apply or should apply, and encourage them to do so. But if I have the board's blessing to start the application process, we can come back on prior to the 18th and determine whether we're in a position to move forward.
And do you have the application created already?
So in the executive summary, we have what is the outline for what the application would be. And I mean, it'll be a web format. And Angie's point is a great one. It's not, wouldn't exclusively be online. That'll be sort of how we'll aggregate it. But as we generally do with these kind of things, we can give printed versions to our school sites and make sure they're available for anyone at any of our schools.
Okay, well, I'm okay with it. I think Member Pritchett's okay with starting the application process. Member Arroyo, Member Rodriguez is not.
You know what I would ask if, public has been engaged and they've provided their comments, and I feel that the comments are extremely valid, and it may change those basic questions that you're asking up front. So maybe, and I would really like to get the feedback from the two new people that are coming onto the board. So maybe we can get some commitment from somebody here in this group, 2 people at a minimum, to say you will reach out to so-and-so and you will reach out to such and such person, the 2 new ones. It'll give Mr. Hansen some time to opine on this as well if he hasn't already. And maybe if we can get that all done by Monday and we can revise that application a little bit, then we can get out with it on Monday. But the way it stands right now, I'm not feeling very comfortable.
Member Royal?
As I said, I'm very, very much willing to help reach out and do whatever homework is needed outside of this meeting to either reach out to the other 2 incoming board members or,
I guess my only question is from a mechanics standpoint. I don't know how how I can synthesize more information from board members and not in a public meeting without it being a Brown Act violation. And so but then we're not, and I understand completely your concerns and questions, Member Rodriguez, but then we're not even getting the application process going until the first meeting in December, which means that it just, I mean, if that's the will of the board, then that's fine. We should just know that it probably means the group doesn't begin meeting till mid to late January potentially, and I don't want to put this group under unnecessary strain. So if that's the will of the board, that's fine. Maybe if you've got specific suggestions, we can potentially talk offline. If there's suggestions on things to add into the application process, I'm all ears. I don't think that was that's our first crack at it. If anyone has ideas of things we can add to it to make it sort of shovel ready, so to speak, I'm certainly open to that. Or if there's even some more generic questions we can ask. I am sensitive to one of the public commenters, I think it was Mr. DeYoung, about making sure the application is accessible for all of our community members so that it's not too cumbersome. And I think where we have it right now is fairly benign. But if I'm not sure if anyone else has any suggestions, I just want to be clear on direction.
Isn't school out next Monday?
Yeah, no, it's out Friday for the next week.
Yeah.
This Friday, yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't do the outreach to the parents next week necessarily.
Well, we can't complete it. We can begin, I guess, is the point. I want to make sure we have 3 or 4 week window to have applications open, I guess, is the thought process, so that if we didn't begin until the 6th, well, like I said, it's up to the board. I'm not sure if the superintendent has any thoughts.
Like I said, I'm willing to come back briefly. If we work on this offline, I'm willing to come back. It'll be like a 15, 20-minute board meeting to come back and approve, next Tuesday, Wednesday, approve the application and then get it out. By that time, the timing will probably be really good because then on Monday, school sites can print it out, put it in the communication packet that goes home to parents, and then we can get that communication out that way.
How about this? Would the board be amenable to Member Rodriguez and I working together offline on some adjustments to the application? And if we have anything that we believe is going to be a substantive change to what we've already laid out, we'll pause the process or bring it back to the entire board. But if Member Rodriguez can reach out to community members and we can work together on just simply adjusting that, we can do that, you and I, without having to worry about a Brown Act violation, and then we can plan on launching a revised version by early next week. Does that work for folks?
I guess I'm a little confused. Sorry. I'm thinking that is it necessary to actually have a board meeting? Can't we just communicate? Like if we said, okay, we're going to use a weekend, I'll reach out to one board member, you reach out to another, and we get the word out there, and then we tell.
We can't.
Yeah, I think I was responding, I guess, to Member Rodriguez's interest in sort of having a bigger discussion about what is and is not going to be in the application process or as part of the application criteria. And I think we can absolutely receive feedback from folks, but I don't. The board wouldn't be able to have a discussion about it with except in a public meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's my suggestion: if Member Rodriguez commits to working with Mr. Ross, I'll put a placeholder on the December 4th board agenda, because that'll give us one meeting before the 18th. So we can still move the process along, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss it on the 4th.
I believe Mr. Ross was talking about he and I working offline, getting the questions for the application process.
Right, but I'm trying to meet your need to have a public discussion on it.
Well, I think I liked his. You could put a placeholder. How about that? And like Mr. Ross said, is that if there's anything material that changes that needs to come back to the board for an approval, then we'll definitely put it on the agenda.
We can take it off the agenda if it's.
And then take it off the agenda if there's nothing of substance that we need to discuss.
Okay.
Work for you?
Yeah.
Right. Superintendent?
No, I think that everything that Gabe said is right on. I think that he just wants to be able to continue to move this part of it forward. It's rather benign. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of substantive changes to it, but at least have an opportunity for Board Member Rodriguez to be able to look at it, work with him on it, and then if you're okay with it, with her working with him, we can at least move that application process forward. I think Gabe's concern and our concern is that if we keep pushing it back a little bit too much, then we're not going to convene this group until late January, get into February, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on them to then be able to make the recommendations and get all the information.
Right, and again, that's exactly right. And again, I mean, once we get the application out, it's just the application process. Ultimately, the board gets to decide, the manner in which they select representation. So we're not committing to anything. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Great, thank you.
I think Jerry wanted to comment a little bit.
I just wanted to remind the board that since your last day next week for staff is Tuesday, that may be the time you post the agenda for December 4. So if you're going to add something, which you can discuss adding something to the agenda for December 4 in an open meeting. You can do that. But right now it's not on the agenda, so you can give direction if you want to the superintendent and staff to add a certain item that you've been discussing if you wish to do that. You can do it. You can always have a discussion to set a matter on your next agenda as a board on the dais anytime. That's not a Brown Act violation. You're just setting something on after discussion for a future agenda as an action item or an information item. You can do that at any time on the dais. That's all you're doing is directing staff, the superintendent, or staff to put something on your next agenda.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Council. We don't have to do that right now. So if we
you don't have to do it
Rodriguez
now.
and I aren't able to reach a point where we feel comfortable with the application, then we'll bring it back for the earlier comments. So, but for now, we'll plan on moving forward with some modifications.
For posting, I think it's going to be next Tuesday for staff for the December 4th agenda.
Got it.
How about we do this just for insurance? President Wu, will you please, and Superintendent Banda, will you please consider a placeholder for an application process for the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee? Is that what it is? All right, just for the insurance of it.
And it's an information item. It wasn't an action item, and so it'll continue to be an information item. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Moving on to agenda item 10.5, resolution number 2815, authorizing the issuance and sale of not to exceed 34 mil Sacramento City Unified School District general obligation refunding bonds and approving certain actions and documents in connection therewith. Now that sounds like it was written by a lawyer.
Yeah, thank you.
Gerardo, you're not a lawyer, are you?
No, I'm not. So I'm the only one who's not. So I'm an accountant. So. No, I don't want to be. President Booth, Superintendent Banda, and members of the board, first, thank you for still paying attention to us. So tonight we're presenting to you information to take advantage of an opportunity to finance the district's Series 2005 and 2007 Measure I general obligation bonds. Now is a perfect opportunity to refinance these bonds and save the district's taxpayers about $3 million. Refinance is a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, but we owe it to the taxpayers. All the savings are passed on to the taxpayers. Our financial advisor, Jeff Small from Capital Public Finance, will discuss the details. Our bank counsel, Eugene Clark Herrera, and our underwriter, Bruce Kearns, are also present to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Banda, President Wu, member of the board, Jeff Small, Capital Public Finance Group. We have before you a very short presentation. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to provide a little bit of background. In 2002, district voters approved Measure I. Essentially, it's $225 million of general obligation bonds, repaid by the taxpayers. In 2005, the district issued $80 million of bonds, and on July 1, 2015, the bonds can be prepaid early. In 2007, the district issued $65 million worth of bonds. Those bonds can be prepaid as soon as July 1, 2017. You may recall that last January, the district refinanced a portion of the 2005 bonds, approximately $46 million, and received a net present value savings of $2.9 million, or 6.5% of the bonds were funded. All of those savings went directly to the taxpayers. Current interest rates are low. The district has an opportunity to refinance the remaining 2005 bonds. It's an excellent opportunity. Also, we periodically update the board on other refinancing opportunities, and one potential refinancing opportunity is the 2007 bonds. With respect to the 2005 bonds, there's approximately $21.5 million worth of bonds outstanding. There's an opportunity to refinance that for a net present value savings of approximately $3 million, assuming the district's current credit rating is in place. That's over 13% of the bonds were funded, which isn't, a very, very high savings rate. The 2007 bonds are not quite as attractive with respect to the savings. The district has $15.2 million worth of bonds that are callable. There's net present value savings of about $535,000, or 3.5%. It's a little bit lower than the 5% target that we would like to see. And in the resolution that will come before you on December 4th, what we're saying is we'd like to see the savings be 5%. So we'd like to see if the market cooperates and there's a couple $100,000 more of savings on the 2007 bonds, and we would recommend that the district refinance those as well. With respect to the 2005 bonds, you see on slide number 7, it's basically a chart. And what is showing is the burgundy area is the current debt service area. The gold bars under it are the proposed new debt service. And on a cash flow basis, the district can save approximately $130,000 a year for the next 12 years, and then $900,000 a year for the remaining 3. So on a cash flow basis, the savings is, over $4 million. If you were to basically take that money up front today, the after cost and net savings is about $3 million, or over 13% of the bonds are funded. So it's a very good opportunity. I think it's very important that whenever the board considers doing a refinancing, as we've always done in the past, we've always wanted to show how do we size the bonds and where does the money go. On slide number 8, you see that there's about $19,165,000 of bonds that would be issued to refinance the 2005 bonds. Bond investors would pay a premium of approximately $3.3 million to the district, and the total bond amount and the premium allows the district to fund an escrow to refinance the 2005 bonds on the call date in 2015, and pay the remaining cost of issuance, underwriter's discount, bond insurance, etc. And that's listed out for you on slide number 8. We also think it's important to provide some estimated cost information on what the professionals are paid. We show that here on slide number 7. Total costs are about $190,000. That includes $12,000 of contingency, which, if not used, would simply go back to the taxpayers. So what are the next steps? The next steps are on December 4th, we come back, ask the board to consider approving a resolution that's contained in your board packet. The resolution authorizes the refunding of both the 2005 and 2007 bonds, assuming a 5% savings rate. Again, 2005 bonds far exceed that measurement. The 2007 bonds aren't quite yet there, but because of the large amount of work involved, we'd rather just have the authorization. If the bond market cooperates and we can get the correct amount of savings while we're there, we would certainly go forward and refinance those 7 bonds as well. So there are a number of other documents that you'll find in your board packet, and they're identified on slide number 10. Of course, one of the items that's very important is the offering document, which is the preliminary official statement. And so we always encourage the board to review that document. We hope to have a bond sale in early January. Bruce Kearns of Stifel Nicholas is here, and he'll be working with his team to price those bonds for savings, and closing would be at the end of January. We have Mr. Clark Carrera here of Orrick Carrington, happy to speak to any of the legal matters, and we're happy to take any questions that the board might have at this time.
Any questions? Any questions from my colleagues? Doesn't look like any. I have one question. So you said for the 07 series bond, the series 07 bonds, you said that you're looking at a net present value savings of about $535,000, but that only equates to a 3.5% savings, and we're looking at a target of about 5% savings. So if we hit that 5% savings, what would be the net present value?
Closer to 700,000. Yeah, thereabouts.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Change your mind? Member Rodriguez.
No, just a question. I provided some comments back in email. I just wanted to know, did Gerardo Castillo share those with you, or was it necessary? Did you feel it was necessary to share what I commented on? Or because I know you did a board communication on it. But...
Yes, I share it with them.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Moving on to item 11, business and financial information. We received that information. Thank you. Item 12, future board meetings, December 4th, 2014, 4:30 here. Closed session, 6:30 open session. December 18th, 4:30 closed session, 6:30 open session. Item 13, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Before we adjourn, I'd just like to mention that Sacramento City Unified suffered a tragic loss this week of one of our students at George Washington Carver, and it just asked for a quick moment of silence for our sophomore, Craig Taylor. Thank you.
To adjourn. Motion from second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.